you can have everyone's attention, please. If you can take out your cell phone, iPhones, handheld, personal devices, they have to be powered down, not vibrate, silent, or any mode other than powered down. If you are speaking this evening, please sign in here. We ask that you direct all comments, questions, and concerns to this board. Speak into the microphone. If you do need to speak to one another, please take it out into the hallway. It interferes with our opportunity to hear those that are speaking. As always, we're going to be courteous to one another and also efficient in terms of time for this evening. We're going to start this evening's meeting with first requesting a motion to open.
I make a motion to open the Board of Architectural Review and Historic Preservation for August 25th, 2014.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Welcome to the August 25th. 2014 meeting of the Architectural Board of Review and Historic Preservation. My name is Curtis Highsmith, hopefully, and I am your chair. I'll introduce our panel. We have Brian Brady, Christina Redding is here this evening, along with Esther Pastor, Ham Hogue. We'd like to welcome our historic consultant, Zach Studenroth, our legal counsel, Bo Robinson, and Antoine, as always, we welcome you as well. We have no sign permits for this evening, so first application, historic, is closed. Did the applicant have anything further to? Okay.
No, we've submitted everything.
Okay. Next application, please.
Next application is 450 Gin Lane for construction of a two-story single-family dwelling with attached garage, covered rear patio, and balcony.
The applicant present.
Yes. Good evening, Melissa Dedovich, Peconic Environmental Associates. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. I'm also here with the architect, Blaise McCoy, as well as Chris from his office, and John Bennett. At the last meeting, one of the things we talked about was the available building envelope on this property. And I'd like to go over with you a little chart we did to show you exactly what the available building envelope is.
Thank you.
As we discussed at the last meeting, our house actually is going to be probably the only conforming house along the stretch of Gin Lane and also along Old Town Pond. It was constrained by the 100-foot dune crest setback. We meet the 30-foot principal side yard setback, as well as the 80-foot principal front yard setback, and while also taking into account the setbacks associated with the wetlands across the street, Old Town Pond. If you may recall, many of the other properties in this area don't, so we were really constrained to this pretty much almost like a pie shaped, as you can see on the chart here. If you also look at the lot coverage, the total proposed lot coverage is 9,112 square feet. The allowable lot coverage for a property this size is 14,446. The gross floor area, which actually is allowed to be 12,597 feet, is only proposed to be 8,752 feet. I think if you look at the property here, we never really got to take a good look at this before. I know one of the comments the board had made was something to the effect that it was boxy. But actually, if you look at it, it's more of an L shape, taking into account the way the building envelope works. Now, we all also listened to what the board said regarding screening. And of course, I have mini plans because I know the board loves mini plans. I have more here also. I think that might be all of them though.
Thank you.
If you need more, let me know.
These match the file set?
This is a new set actually.
I'm going to stamp these into the record.
2 sets.
Okay. If you look at page, okay, can I click through that? Thank you. If you look at the first page, at the planting plan, we've actually added some heights to privet. It's now going to be between 12 and 14 feet in height. I know Mrs. Pastor had mentioned about the screening, and we took that into account. So we're actually going to remove the existing 8-foot high hedge and replace it with a much taller hedge. We also added another London plane tree up in this corner to provide a little more additional screening to our neighbor. I also thought we'd go over the roof lines again. If you look at,
So from our last meeting, there had been no changes to
Design
the
change.
actual, sorry?
No design change?
No design
well,
change?
the only design change actually is we wanted to show you that with the increased privet hedge, it actually, and also looking at, if you remember correctly, the shot we showed before did not include the wooden slats. That this actually breaks up the glass that I know was an issue by the board. Again, our property, our house is 8 feet lower than if it was allowed to be a pitched roof. We're about over 12 feet lower than the property that's to the west, and about 7 feet lower than the property that's to the east. And that's also because we're conforming with regard to dune crest setbacks. It's also interesting, if you look at this picture too, the telephone pole's actually higher than our house.
We can turn that around so the public can see.
While Melissa's gathering John Bennett the applicant, one thing that I did want the board to be aware of, and it relates back to the permissible building envelope on the property. Because I know one of the things that you see at first is that the property is not centered on the proposed house is not centered on the property. That's because the building envelope gets severely pinched on the westerly side of the property. So there's really, in order to take advantage of this, what we have of this is very narrow building envelope squeezed between the coastal erosion hazard area, the dune crest setback, and the wetland setback. We've got this, as Melissa said, the pie-shaped building envelope. So in terms of, although the board doesn't have site plan review power, one of the neighbors' concerns, so I understand that, is why wasn't the building centered? And the reason the building wasn't centered is because the building envelope, which again is very constrained, expands considerably to the east side. Anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't want
It's
to...
okay. And also just relating to our changes in the landscape plan, if you look at the line of sight now, there's a dramatic difference, and I'll show the public after I show you. The original line of sight, and again, this is taken from across Gin Lane as if you're pretty much going fishing in the pond over there, is much higher now. You really are going to not see, you'll probably see a little bit of the roof line out of it, and that's from the opposite side of Gin Lane if you're walking down across the street. And on top, there's a before and after of what the original privet hedge looked like and what it's going to be with the 12 to 14 foot high
So
privet
what's the
hedge.
basis for your angle shots here? Just photoshopped and then angled on, or how are we warranting that the pitches are right, the angles are right?
The angles are right. I believe it was done using a computer program out of Blaise McCoy's office along with Chris LaGuardia's office, and I've used them for many submissions, and they're accurate.
Any standard that you used?
Blaise McCoy, the architect for the project.
What we did was we took the house to the left and to the right, used the survey heights for those, built three-dimensional computer models of those, and then superimposed our model into it. So the accuracy is
What's the
about
software that you used?
we use a combination of SketchUp, Revit, and AutoCAD.
Okay. And how'd you get your angles, your degrees?
Angles.
The degree of side view from the Crown of Road? These guys, right here.
From the photographs?
Yeah.
We just took them standing up, about 5.5 foot.
But no fixed spot.
No, we went all the way down the street.
There's no way to certify the view on these.
No, his testimony is certification.
Right. I mean, this is we
That's exactly,
submitted.
excuse me if I may. You can look in Richardson on evidence. in a trial, the best evidence of the accuracy of a photograph is by the photographer. So that is the certification.
Okay, thank you. Last time, one more question. You say you've increased the screen, but have you lowered the building or changed the building? It's still cited exactly
No,
as
it's
it
still
was in
cited
the original
exactly.
application?
It was really, yes.
Okay. And you said you changed some screening over the fenestration?
I believe the wood slats, we had talked about it briefly, but now we've actually updated our plans to show they're accurately reflected on both these plan and on the height plan, the wooden slats. Actually, if you look at the plan, the site plan, now you'll see, the first, that one.
This guy?
Yes, that one.
Uh-huh.
That when you're walking down the street, if you see it's at a little angle here, it's actually you're not gonna be able to see any of the glass, you're gonna see the wood.
Right. But the exposure is going to increase the farther back you are. Is that correct?
Well, this is a good example of it. This is taken from the
Right.
dock on
But
the
an
other side.
angle of attack here versus an angle of attack back there, it's going to be increased. The view is still the same. The placement's still the same.
And this is the angle of attack that's taken from the dock that's on the north side of the pond.
You know, I was standing out at that ice dock yesterday on the south side, where you have access to Old Town. And I did a little video of how far and how, it's about, a half a mile from that point
Yeah, a third of a
to
mile.
the south
third.
side. Third
I
of a
don't
mile?
think it's a third, maybe.
Maybe.
And it's amazing how, I think you looked at that, Brian, too. It's amazing how impacting this is on that public right-of-way. So I'm not so interested, as I said, the first time on the public right-of-way from the beach and so much as the public right-of-way from Old Town.
Well, it's funny you talk about that because I was involved in the Sugarman project, and I get more comments nowadays that they wish they didn't have as much screening as we were made to put there because you can't see the house. And if you remember correctly, Sawyer Burton, that was one of the first houses they did in Southampton Village, and now they've become very. And I'd hate to see us have to go through. I mean, Mr. McCoy's actually, what's very interesting is
Let
there's
me
a.
just finish. But the thing is when you're standing further back, a third of a mile away or whatever, it sounds like a lot of space, but it's a very used pond in the village in the wintertime and so forth, when all this privet is basically going to
Skated there myself.
shrink up.
Not
I
very
still
well,
do.
but-
You can see the ocean beyond, and that would, basically, this house would be blocking that whole viewpoint, in a sense.
Well, any house would.
Box.
Any house would,
As a matter of
given the
fact, a
building
traditional
envelope.
house with a higher roof would block it, would
Do you remember the,
consider it more.
okay, you remember the first meeting, and you've actually gotten into a kayak and gone out and taken pictures on different applications, you're kind of known for that. Have you ever taken a picture from the public right-of-way of Old Town and seen how this house is going to?
That's it, from the
That's
dock.
it.
These were your photographs?
No, actually, I was going to take the kayak, but I didn't feel we had to because it's been taken by.
Okay.
And with the cyanobacteria in the water, I wasn't going to go in.
Melissa, that's your photograph?
That's my photograph.
Okay.
And you took it from the dock?
Correct.
That photograph?
Yes.
And you superimposed the structure,
Again, if this was a pitched roof, given the building envelope, this is how much it would be going up to, the 54-foot height.
what does that shot look without that house superimposed on it? Do you have that?
No, it would have the house that's over here. In fact, I have an existing site survey, I have it in my hand. It would be the,
Well, while Melissa's looking, I just don't want to leave the impression that this was an application that was placed in the record and no changes were made from the beginning part of the application. When the house first came in, it had a stucco facade, and at great expense, probably a factor of $600,000 to $700,000, the facade was changed to a stone facade to give it some age and depth. And we added these wooden slats of brise soleil to cut down on the reflectivity and the amount of glass present from both from all of the right of ways and from the neighboring properties. We did replace the existing privet hedge with a 12-foot high privet hedge and added substantial trees for privacy. So while it's sort of an organic process, getting feedback from you guys and trying to respond to that, we haven't sat still. We have tried to listen to the comments of the board as they have been made. What would be gratefully, I know Bruce and Diane Grossman are here this evening and wanted to say a couple of things, but what would be, I mean, this has been a long journey for them in trying to design a house that fits into that envelope and also is not imposing at all. It's as you know, the roof design, the roof limitations for flat roofed as opposed to traditional houses, or I think you lose about, what, 8 feet? 8 feet, so
Is that
that's.
because of FEMA, John?
No, it's not because of FEMA. Under the village code, a roof, if you have a pitched roof house, it has a maximum height of 35 feet. A flat roof house has a maximum height of 27 feet, which is something that'll probably be discussed tomorrow night at a hearing for the trustees, because that's one of the things that people are getting sort of pushed into. That's what you see happening in the town. So we've tried to be sensitive to all of those things, and really what we would, at this point, like to see some specific comments. I know you often say that it's not up to us, up to you to design the house, but we'd like to, Diane, unless you had something to say.
One quick question, Melissa.
Yeah.
On the house, the lot is thinner as it goes west, correct? It's deeper, if you will, on the east
The
side?
building envelope is pinched on the west side.
Meaning that it's heavier on the east than it would
Yes,
be on the
which
west,
is why
correct?
And
And that's why
ideally-
you have a projection, excuse me, that's why you have a projection that runs south on the eastern section of the house, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
And also, just to answer your question before, this is what the current house looks like. It's over here, and it's all the way over here. If you remember correctly, the current house is set back only 13 feet from the property line, not the required 30 feet, which is why right now you have a wonderful view. If you look, I'm sure there was a much better view
One
before the...
one last thing, I'll be quiet for a minute, but have you, since it's heavier on the left and projecting out towards the south or towards the ocean, that's not affected so much with the design. I think it's a nice way of looking at it. Have you considered stepping the broadness of the house back as it goes west along Old Town, so it becomes somewhat submissive? You had a neighbor of yours, actually, that was to the west last time around.
Actually, if you lose that, we would lose
East to the east.
east. We lose GFA, which, as it is, we're way under the allowable GFA. You may recall the allowable GFA for this property is 12,597, and we're only at 8,752.
Right, but
So
nevertheless,
it's
have
hardly
you,
an aggressive application, in terms of massing GFA.
so would you consider stepping that back to break that long, broad north elevation on the Old Town side?
You can't step it back without losing gross floor area.
So the
As it is,
zoning
we
is
have
what's driving that?
correct.
Unfortunately, the
I see.
zoning is
Yeah.
driving the entire,
Yeah.
Project.
a lot of the project. Not only, I mean, I'm sure the Grossmans would prefer, and I've had this conversation with them, they would have preferred to center the house. You know, I'm sure Mr. Smith would have been, the neighbor to the west, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, would have been happier with that. But I'm sandwiched in between wetland setback that came into effect after the creation of this lot,
In the
a
crest of
dune
Dune.
crest setback that was originally 50 feet and is now 100, and a coastal erosion hazard line setback. So I know at the last meeting, Zach was talking about, you know, placement of the house on a property like this, and I understand it, and I understand why that comment was made, and I understand in a world where you had a farmland lot, you would want to try to achieve that. But I've got the zoning board of appeals approval, and it's very circumscribed, and it's as a result of these regulatory setbacks. I can ask any architect these days, more and more you're designing not to an aesthetic, well, you try to, but regulatory setbacks, heights, distance from various things. And you're, as a builder.
And the
you're aware
length of the house, east to west?
111 feet.
Okay. And depth, I know the depth is considerably
The depth
shallower on the
changes,
west side, but with the, what is
I-
it on both ends, do you know offhand?
Not off the top of my head, sorry. One thing I would like to add, I don't know if anybody has had a chance to see this article that was in the Southampton Press, Man Searching. And it was really interesting, some of the quotes she had in here. And I'm just going to share some with you. I'm sure you've already you're attuned with this. In Southampton Village Historic Districts, the real question is whether or not the sum of the parts will continue to form the greater whole. She goes on to quote a section that's actually, and I don't know if I want to bore you guys, but I will hand it in, from your own architectural design guide, which I've used many times in this board, and it's very helpful. But one thing she quotes is, one of the most difficult tasks for a local board of architectural review is the administration and guidelines for new or infill construction in an historic district. The best and most effective architectural design guidelines are those that do that, guide the design practice rather than regulate it. The National Trust for Historic Preservation, in its booklet Reviewing New Construction Projects in the Historic District, states that design guidelines for an historic area should not dictate certain styles for new buildings. Most districts exhibit an evolution of architectural styles and cultural trends, including the 20th century. Therefore, guidelines that emphasize context and design elements rather than styles allow for the broadest and most flexible interpretation for new construction. And I know you're used to this, but it's also quoted in Ms. Churchin's article, and she also notes that at 450 Gin Lane, the former site of the Dr. T. Gallard Thomas Sandhurst, architect Blaise McCoy has proposed a modern house that is taking its cues from the context of the surrounding historic structures. It is neither taller nor shorter than any of its neighbors. She also notes this particular house will play nicely with its older neighbors, and modern houses, well done, can actually relate to the historic surroundings.
I might want to add that as sort of a fun thing to do. I sometimes, in terms of how old people think buildings are, I'll drive them down to, it's right across the street from Mr. Bachman's house. Lucian Ting built Mr. Bachman's house, but he also built a stunning international style house. And I'll say to people, how old do you think that house is? And people say 50s, 60s. Mr. Bachman might be able to correct me, but I believe it's 1920s. And that has become part of the fabric of the village and is in all of the literature about the great homes of the village of Southampton. So it's important, to be able to move forward on these sort of things. If you wanted to stay in a period where you took something that came out of the studios of McKim, Mead and White, you would just your board would be reduced to taking a transparency and putting it over the elevations of the property. I think this is an attempt to do something which is brilliant, because what we have a property that's significantly constrained by environmental setbacks, FEMA requirements, coastal erosion, dune crest, wetlands. The Zoning Board of Appeals recognized that, which is why they gave the approval for this building. I know that doesn't constrain you, but we would respectfully request that you take all of those items into consideration to see what we're trying to get at. I know also that there's been an awful lot of talk about the height of homes in the village, and interestingly, this is an attempt to cut a medium ground between what has been the long-held interpretation of the building department and what people have been concerned about, which is these FEMA regulations, which no one asked for, which the Federal Emergency Management Agency and the government chose to impose on the property, on the village, and some of the attempts to keep these houses lower. I don't know. Bruce, did you have any thoughts about this? I know it's. Sure. I like to bring my clients in so that the.
Can we finish up with Melissa for a minute? Thank you.
It's your
In
board.
order?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry.
First and foremost, there was some dialogue. Brian, did you have any questions about the architecture, any issues with the?
Yep.
No? Any comments about the vertical slats now? They're part of, now become part of the design to try to deflect some of the.
I can appreciate what they're doing to deflect some of the glare that's on there. Whether it's successful architecturally or not, I'm not.
Well, that's our board, and that's the
Right.
premise of our board.
Right.
Not necessarily functionality of it, but more so of the architectural elements.
Right. No, I think it's creating something that's very linear and very vertical instead of horizontal. I think it's creating to the overall box of the house, because you're looking at it. I mean, you can. Your beautiful picture here. What you're seeing here is a big square box of slats right now, and I just think that I think the scale of that is not in keeping with the scale and the context of what's here.
I guess what would be helpful, and I know it's not. You've said this many times, and I understand it. It's not up to you to design the house, but some direction would be very helpful.
It's very hard to give direction when, at the very first meeting, I came out and said, I'm struggling with this beautiful house on this lot, on this pond between historic homes.
I know, Brian, Mr. Brady, you've been extremely forefront. I was hoping if we could get that
pull the rest of them.
Well, we did, and we thought actually switching from the stucco to the stone.
It all helps.
It
all helps.
In a way, visually, if you look at the lighter stone compared to the wood, that breaks it up too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again, we have a building envelope that really dictates where we're going with the house.
I know.
And the houses you're comparing it to are all pre-existing non-conforming with regard to setback on
I'm
both
talking
side
about fenestration.
Esther?
I think you've made a lot of compromises and changes in an attempt to soften what really is a boxy structure, clean, modern structure, and I appreciate the efforts. I think the privet hedge and the additional plantings, again, are extremely helpful. I think the one-story roof line makes another big compromise, because if you went to a two-story traditional house, you'd be 8 foot higher, and it would be even bigger. So I that's all I can really say on this.
Steen?
I agree with Esther.
Obviously, this board is not opposed to modern homes. I'm sure
understand.
the majority of the people in this room would tell you that we don't shy away from it.
I don't think you have, no.
And we haven't in the past, and we are
Your
very much
record is-
open and welcoming to more modern in the historic district. It can't be just one element for the existence, because there's no room for an evolution of any new style if you do so. I understand that the limitations of your design. What I will say is that maybe not conforming to the lot, it does help some of the screening that you presented. The fact that it's a little lower than most homes would have been proposed makes it, I guess, a little bit more accepting, but I still question whether it's actually acceptable for the lot. So no more in terms of how we can, I guess, be persuaded that this particular home has some other elements to the home that can be softened a little bit more, at least for me, right away, or any purview.
Does anybody have any specific suggestions?
Actually,
Yes.
I'm sure the ocean side. I don't know who did the ocean side.
I think that the house, the way it is too long for the lot. I think whatever your GFA is and all that, a lot's challenged, a lot was challenged before, it still remains challenged, but if this board is an aesthetic board, I think that the breaking up and minimizing perhaps of a certain section of this and defining it with less mass is critical. I said that at the first meeting, and I'll say it now. Whether you call it fenestration, which is what it is, the slats are basically covering your fenestration as an attempt to sort of set it back a little bit by material. I don't think it's working. You have a 4-car garage that's orientated north-south. Can you consider that the building might be reorientated 90 degrees, so it's less dominant on the public right-of-way, and that it's not as broad?
There's no room for that.
Is there any room for
I
it?
didn't see anything to do with that.
If
I mean,
there's
I'd
no room,
gladly
but with all due respect,
Anything.
if there's no room, okay, then why is it being built? If there's no room for this, why are we pressing the envelope for this? I understand your rights
I
and
don't
your,
understand that question
I-
at all.
okay, let me rephrase. Is there a way to break up the massiveness of this house on the Old Town
It
side?
says, how big is it? It's an
8,300 square feet.
8,300 square feet house.
The
GFA is
GFA is
12,000,
12,000. Well, what we're proposing is 8757.
Just
Almost
for the record,
9,000.
the applicant has the right to present before this board any rendition, any elevation, any design for his or her lot. This board is not questioning your ability to build. We're an aesthetic board, so we're
Only
looking
aesthetics,
at it
John.
from an aesthetic standpoint, not necessarily that
Thank
why
you for
should you.
interpreting that. I appreciate
Okay.
it. Okay, thank you.
Nevertheless, can you look at options for breaking up
Seriously,
as,
I had to be-
I know.
can you look at options for breaking up the massing of this house on the north elevation, as a couple of our members have said in the past?
I think we
Besides just,
have.
you're basically putting hedge and you're putting slats on the structure, is that correct?
Yeah, well, I mean, the brise soleil is something that's commonly done on a contemporary home to try to create light and shadow and texture to the house. It's a common.
And as an attempt to break up the broadness of fenestration as well.
And again, Ms. Surgeon also said that she actually is impressed and likes that. I mean, you get different opinions from different people. That this board may be saying it's a little, to use your term, I don't like it, but boxy or linear. Ms. Surgeon really thinks it works well in this area. I mean, if you took a whole poll, but I think we've tried pretty much everything with the change of materials, and
Is there any suggestion for change in materials? It's a tough one. Yeah. Yes,
If you step forward.
this is the owner. Bruce Gross.
How y'all doing?
Are you finished with your presentation, Melissa?
I don't know, am I?
No.
I just thought this was a good time to say a couple things because I've watched you on TV a couple
You're the
times
owner?
now. I'm the owner.
Okay.
Why would you do that?
Well,
Boring.
I was getting
Last
some
meeting
very
was
mixed.
Five hours.
I was getting some very mixed feedback, and I wanted to see for myself what that feedback was. And you know, the irony is that we had, when we were doing our diligence on acquiring this property, we had a couple of builders look at the property with us. We had a couple of architects look at the property with us. We analyzed the envelope very carefully and all of the limitations on the land. We recognized that we had very limited options on this piece of property, notwithstanding the expense of this property. And what we determined was, even though we're a family of 6 and we're looking for the ability to build a house with a certain size, that given some of the environmental considerations, given the elevation of the house that was required, that while we're building an 8,000 square foot house, the livable space is really somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 square feet. And by no means is that a small house. Our current house that we live in now is a traditional house in Westchester. It's about 5,500 square feet. It's very comfortable. But this is the most that the most appropriate sized house that we could build, given this envelope, given the location. If anything, we are trying to make this as subtle and low-key as it can possibly be. And we just have serious limitations of what we can do. Now, we did look at building a more traditional house. We started the process looking at a more traditional house. And because of the proximity to the road in particular, the way a traditional house, as it needed to be elevated given the FEMA codes, we determined that it would actually look bizarre. That here we are going through this whole process trying to build this house and try to make it as low and as low-key as possible. And next thing we know, we were going to either have to elevate it or bring in so much fill that it was going to be disruptive to our neighbors to the east, to the west, that it was going to be sitting up on a hill. It was going to look ridiculous.
Not only that, if I may, this is very important because it's not like some of the homes that are set back on a meadow where fill can be brought in. You have a wetland setback here, so you don't have the ability to bring in the fill that makes a traditional home sit on what looks like natural grade. Because one of the things that the Zoning Board of Appeals in governing the way construction is on this lot is to try to minimize the fill. I don't think there's any importation of fill whatsoever except for the septic
No, in
system.
fact, we originally were going to bring in some more, and they asked us to remove it.
Yes, is to cut it back.
So
So
we
there's
did
not
that.
the
We didn't
opportunity
cut
to raise up the house so that you, on a traditional house, so that you can't, a traditional house sitting up, raised up on a podium without fill around, it looks absurd. So I'm
It
sorry.
looks absurd. And so we then went through a process where we tried to create more of a hybrid. It's not a technical phrase, but I would call it a hybrid between something more contemporary and something more traditional. We determined that looked ridiculous also. That to mix the two types of architecture would be much worse than picking one or the other. And since we couldn't pick traditional because of what we just said, that we were almost forced to go in this direction. We had no choice. And here we are sitting on this beautiful piece of property with, trust me, more limited options than I ever imagined. And so when
The combination of FEMA and all your environmental setbacks drove this design.
Absolutely, 100%. We were, I would say, predisposed. We were not predisposed. We were balanced in terms of our preference. Like I said, we live in a traditional house now. We would have gone either way depending on working with our experts, the builder, architect, etc., we were open-minded towards what type of house we would build. And we think that this is a beautiful, clean, simple, low structure that complies with everything we need to comply with, and we have no options, frankly.
Just
And
a
we've
quick
tried to-
question to your attorney.
Sure.
What zone is this? Is VE zone? Is it 11 feet from bottom of floor joist?
Bob Smith
Or
put
is
it on
it
the survey.
VE 17, so it's 17 feet above mean high tide to the bottom of the joist? Is
No,
that
it's
correct?
17 plus 2 to the
17
bottom of the
plus
lowest
2, so-
horizontal structure member, so it's 19 feet above
19 feet above sea
Sea
level.
level.
Just to the bottom of the first floor
lowest
joist.
horizontal structural member,
Right.
bottom of the joist.
Got it, okay. And then your first floor is how tall? How many feet?
Well, the first floor, you add a floor package of about 3 feet, I guess? 2 feet, you would know better than I would, so 19, 21.
20 and 21.
What is
What do
it?
you think? And what's the ridge height from the crown of the road versus the mean tide?
Well, you don't take it from the crown of the road, you take
Just out of curiosity, because you're doing that on your application at 40, by the way.
The elevation.
Oh.
Different.
Those are the elevations. So our ridge height is going to be 46, where it could be.
That's above sea level, though. The ham is
Correct.
looking for something above the crown of the road.
Say
or-
6 feet, it'll be about 41, 42 feet.
About 41, 42.
Right, okay. All right, anyway, are you willing to talk about the massing of the house on Old Town as far as stepping that back or playing with the elements to minimize? You've already added the idea of putting in a screening, so to speak, over the fenestration. Would you look at other elements? Would you have your architect look at other elements that may bring the linear, or if you will, the east-west flow down a little bit?
You're talking about what you were talking about before with the garage?
Yeah, with Brian, no, not the garage, but the mass of the major structure itself.
Well, the structure is separated.
Are you talking about moving this back further?
No,
It's all-
I'm talking about taking that element that runs east-west, not the main one, Melissa, but the western section, and breaking that up a little bit on the north elevation, on the Old Town side.
I don't understand.
I don't understand that. This is- yeah.
Sorry.
He's talking about stepping the second floor back.
Stepping the second floor back.
Right.
And you're saying, well, if you're just stepping the second floor, then we're losing considerable square footage, I assume.
Yes.
Just asking a quick question for the architect. I'm sorry, it's stone, correct?
Limestone.
Limestone. If he just changes the fenestration to more wood rather than stone, do you think it'll take away some of that commercial boxy feel, soften it a little more, and instead of the facade being that limestone, which gives such a hard and chunky look, and soften it with something more?
Yeah. I think the limestone is appropriate for the design of that house.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd agree.
But if we move the second floor back, so we're going to lose, I don't know, 2,000 square feet.
Not
And
necessarily. There are ways of stepping it back a little more subtly.
What did you have in mind?
I'd
That's
like
not a
to
challenge.
talk
that's
to your
a request.
architect and ask him if you don't mind once you're finished. So,
It becomes a pretty difficult operation without losing square footage. If you step, say, this much of this house back, which I think is what we're understanding.
what about
I
cantilevering?
mean, you can cantilever it, and it puts the entire outdoor space under shadow. The pool, the outdoor deck, it's a pretty big hardship, I think, for living.
I see, okay.
So,
And
What
none of that
about-
cantilevering either to a dune crest setback or a waterfront setback?
What about
the board
cantilevering the
just-
second floor living space toward the north so that it breaks that facade up?
I don't think we can. Our building envelope is.
Because of your, because of your setbacks.
Yeah, and that argument has been made in the zoning board of appeals numerous occasions. People say, well, I'm not at the dune crest setback, or I'm not at the wetland setback, I'm cantilevering over it, and the board members and their counsel will tell you immediately, cantilevering, it is where it is. It doesn't give you any relief.
So you have already reached out to the ZBA during your application to try to adjust this footprint a bit?
Well, they gave us relief.
yeah, we got
They gave
relief.
us relief. They gave us relief from the dune crest setback for certain elements, and they gave us relief from the wetland setback for certain elements. That's why we're.
What are those elements, though? Swimming pool, does it have anything to do with the volumetric size of the house?
Septic, swimming pool, we had needed front yard relief for the house.
The swimming pool's at 100 feet, it was the septic.
It's a septic, yeah.
And also the relief given for the front of the house was actually because we were still, even though we needed relief for the front of the house, it was still not as close to the wetlands as the existing house.
Okay, thanks. So your concern would be shadowing towards the south, if you cantilevered
Exactly.
towards the south, and that would shadow over, you were saying, the swimming pool. So
Right, I
if
mean,
the
it-
pool
you'd
wasn't an issue,
basically be
would you be
shadowing all-
able to move the pool towards the landward crest of Dune, or landward seat of Dune?
No, because
No?
it's a structural setback.
Very well, okay. Thank you.
We also, you know, we don't want to lose square footage. I think we've already made many concessions from a square foot standpoint. Like I said, we have a large family, and I
Understood.
mean, you should have seen when we were designing the interior of this house how limiting, again, how limiting the envelope was, and how difficult it was to come up with something that.
Keeping in mind also that, you know, on a FEMA house like this, all the mechanical systems, everything is
Have to be
inside,
above.
it's inside the envelope
It is
of that,
challenging.
of that square footage.
Yeah.
And unlike Sagaponic, which gives you a little bit of as
They
of
give
right
you a
GFA
credit.
for the mechanicals and things like that, it all has to go in the habitable area
Mhm.
in the village.
There's no question of being able to put any dunnage or anything to offset that.
Would only increase the building height.
Mhm.
And
So in a way, the FEMA is
Increase the
good that
sky
it lowers,
level.
but it's also impacting your GFA, correct? Okay, thanks.
And again, you know, I think you have to state it a couple times because the fill in this area simply doesn't allow you to build a traditional home
I
that
understand
wouldn't look
that,
bizarre.
of that size.
And you know, we knew what we were getting into with this piece of property, but we didn't. I can tell you, we never anticipated, given the precedent that we had seen, basically architecturally speaking, in the area. We never, ever expected this kind of feedback. So we'd appreciate your consideration.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment on the application? Please step forward.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and board members. My name is Jeff Bragman, and I represent Neil Smith, who's with me tonight and was at the last hearing. He is the closest neighbor and the one most clearly affected by the application. The Smith house is located to the east of the property. It's 466 Gin Lane. And as you know, he has a main house, and he also has a guest house that's closer to the road. And the house to the west of the applicant's property also has a guest house that's toward the front, because this is a part of the historic pattern of development on Gin Lane. And I'm actually here tonight to request an adjournment, but I wanted to talk to you about some of the evidence that I've been able to see. I've looked at the prior hearings that you've held, and I want to discuss some of the substantive issues because I know you're well into this hearing. There is significant evidence that would be helpful to the board that's not in the record yet, and it's our hope that the board is going to require this evidence to be produced by the applicant, because I think it would help to contribute and give you a little bit more certainty about what's going on with this building. Section 65(6)A of the Village Code requires applications to submit certain materials. This is mandatory, it's not discretionary. And those materials are comparative elevation drawings, which must show the relationship between the proposed and the existing properties, and comparative perspective drawings, which also have to show a relationship to the adjacent properties. And the code uses the phrase, if they're available, but I've suggested to the board before that in an application like this, which is so obviously a pretty grand plan, a very expensive lot, it's difficult to argue that the architect could not produce these kinds of drawings.
Did you see the submission this evening?
I've seen, yes, I have. Those are not elevation drawings. That's a photo simulation, and I'll talk to you about that photo simulation in a little bit. And I think it's important that we use the term of art. An elevation is an architectural rendering to scale with a methodology that we can interpret. There's no guesswork. Ham Hogue doesn't have to say, well, how did you figure out where you're going to stand when you made those photographs? You look at an elevation, it's all in scale. The methodology is apparent in the drawing. And it's very important to us because Mr. Smith has a very small guest house that has a way of sort of conveniently disappearing in the drawings, the photo simulations that you've been given. It's often obscured with trees that aren't there. The trees are of unusual heights, and I'll get to talking about that. But the point is, your code requires these materials to be submitted. These materials would show in scale the relationship between the proposed house and the Smith house and the Smith guest house, which we think is very critical and is absent from the record. And it's the only way that you can get a good visual idea of what's really going on here. These photo simulations don't do the trick. And we think that, unlike photoshopped or manipulated photo simulations, we want real data. We want real methodology. We want real measurements. And my first suggestion tonight is that the board clearly state to the applicant unequivocally that he has to comply with the requirements of your village code and provide those documents. The ARB may have been referring to drawings like that with a methodology that you can understand and that I want to be able to lay a scale down on a drawing so I can see really how far this house is from the guest cottage, how high the guest cottage is. You don't even know that information. You don't have it in the record right now. You may have referred to that as a streetscape, and as I recall from the last meeting, it was clear that the board was asking the applicant to produce a streetscape, and there was also talk about a three-dimensional plan with a variety of views, but I say let's go back to the statute. That's what it's all about. Let's follow the law and have the applicant submit what's required. The same thing could be said for the landscape plans. It's more than a little vague when the applicant comes in and says, well, we just took pictures and we kind of stood where we stood and that's how we got the sight line. And at the last meeting, Esther Pastor was saying, I want to see a more extensive landscaping plan. And that request kind of got diverted and when they pulled out the landscaping plan that they had. But, one thing that strikes me is that this house is 19 feet above grade. It's 19 feet above grade. So if the change from a 10-foot privet hedge to a 12-foot privet hedge, I have to disagree with some of the comments I heard tonight. I don't think that's a dramatic gesture that really remarkably helps the situation at all. Because just think about it, just using common sense. This building starts 19 feet above the ground. Great. So you put up screening that's 10 feet tall. You don't even reach the ground floor elevation of this building. And that's a problem.
I hate to interrupt,
You
my
can't,
lord.
sir, you can't interrupt. I'm sorry, sir. You can't interrupt.
His measurements are wrong.
Understood. But
Okay.
he still has the right to speak, please.
Okay, well, if
Please address the board.
we need some accuracy in the drawings, is what I'm saying. We have concerns with some of the evidence that's already been put in the record. I want to talk about the photo simulation, a couple of the photo simulation photographs. Neil and I walked out to his property. We looked at his cottage. It's a pretty low two-story building. It looks to be roughly in the range of 20, 25 feet tall. It's a pretty small building. That's nowhere in the record. We don't really have it. It should be in an elevation so that we know what we're talking about. The photo materials that have been submitted, I did a little work with it, and you can do this too by looking at it. This is the smaller version of this photograph that you have, and if you see in the original, they gave you a shaded area that was in pink that represents an 8-foot interval. Okay, so that's something that we can use to kind of eyeball this to see how accurate it is. And what they said when they presented this was that this represents the height of the roof if it were a two-story building. Interestingly, when I first heard that, to me it suggested that that would be the roof. But that's really not the case if you think about it, because the building's so large, it would need a much larger roof. So if it were a two-story building and they were going up to that ridge line, the front facade of this building would look markedly different because they'd have to lower that front facade. And that is a reconfiguration of the building that I think the board might want to consider. We would like to have an opportunity to do some of the reconfiguring that the board is talking about if the applicant can't or won't do it. Because every time there's a suggestion of making a change to this, the answer seems to be there's nothing we can do. It's impossible. But what I wanted to say to you about this photo simulation and say it in a way to emphasize why you need elevations, not the simulation, is if you take that little pink band as an 8-foot interval, as I did on this little sticky tab. This is a low-tech way you can do it. You can do it with your own diagrams. And you move it down to the base floor elevation of that house. In this simulation, that house looks to be 16 feet tall. That's how it measures out using that 8-foot interval as a scale. So what I'm saying is, while the numbers may be accurate here, and I don't dispute the numbers, the height that the figures that he's using, the photo simulation does not accurately reflect the true size of this building. And you can also see it quite readily. Just, again, this is just a common sense thing, because if you take your little 8-foot scale on your sticky tab and put it above Neil Smith's guest cottage, it comes right up to the 46-foot line indicated for the roof of the proposed new construction. Okay, so what I'm saying is this is not a visually accurate depiction, although the numbers are correct and the addition is correct. There is an 8-foot difference between a flat-roofed house and a gabled-roofed house. This photo simulation is not an accurate simulation. So we're concerned. I know I'm coming late to the party, but that's very concerning to us, that some of the evidence that you have is just not accurate. Now, John, in a very lawyerly way, said, Richardson's on evidence, and you don't need to know about the methodology because a photograph, it's the person that took the photograph. Well, John's a little bit right, but mostly wrong. As an old trial lawyer, I know Richardson's on evidence pretty well. Photographs are self-authenticating. There's a reason for that. Anybody can look at a photograph and go, okay, I can see that's a photograph. We know the technology is accurate to the extent that photos are accurate. This is not a photograph. This is a photo simulation. It's not accurate. It's also got some other things. It's got a miraculous 46-foot tree that's right by the house, which I think is, a little overly convenient. Now, I can understand, I'm sorry, I'm being a little facetious about that they could say, well, if you're standing closer to a small tree, it'll look bigger. No doubt that's true. But in this diagram, you've got trees that are literally up to the roof line. That's 46 feet high. They're talking about planting 26 trees that can grow, I think it was like 24 feet, if I recall correctly. So again, now, I don't want to mess up the ground floor elevation.
Please address the board.
But they're talking about putting somewhere around 24-foot, 25-foot trees, and you've got a house with the elevation of 19 feet, and it's up to 48 feet. So the idea that the landscaping is dramatically effective or dramatically changed, I think, doesn't square with the facts, and it's another reason why Esther Pastor's comment that she needed a more detailed landscaping plan is probably a good idea. It'd be nice to see a really accurate, scaled landscaping plan. And yes, before you ask, I have looked at the diagrams with the view shed that they created. We're also a little concerned. This is another part of their photo simulation. This is the side of the house facing Neil Smith's property. And it's got, really miraculous trees that appear to reach up to the roof line. Now, again, they could say, well, where we were standing, these trees are really lower, but they look higher because of the angle of the view. But that's not an accurate depiction. And What we don't like about it, or what I don't like about it as an attorney, is I can't really make heads or tails about what's going on underneath it. I think what's going on underneath it is there's some balconies here, top and bottom. I think I can see that. I haven't seen the plan elevation. I haven't really had time to
So
look
your
at.
complaint this evening is more about the height?
No. My complaint is, I want to suggest to the board that a lot of the confusion about what this looks like, how it's really going to impact the neighbor and the neighborhood, will be. You'll be assisted greatly if you simply require him to produce the evidence that your code requires. Let's get comparative elevations and comparative perspective drawings. In addition, I want to offer to you the fact that we're willing, if the applicant can't or won't and says this is the only configuration of a house that can be done, we'd like to, we have a team of people that we're engaging in this case, and we'd like to present some reconfigurations because we don't believe that this is the only configuration of a house. It is true this is a constrained building envelope. It is not true that houses that are elevated can't be traditional houses. There are seaside houses that are elevated, and they put lattice work and they put carports underneath, just the way this house is doing. It doesn't preclude the use of traditional architecture. Also, another thought in your architectural requirements is that the building. This is not a question of duplicating the past or putting a copying machine down on a classic piece of architecture. It's about making a gesture, toward the vernacular that's in use in the neighborhood. It's about using the vernacular, the vocabulary of the houses that already exist that you're charged with protecting, I might add, because there's been a lot of references to houses that were either built before there was a historic district that are not in this section of Gin Lane. And this project could easily gesture toward the vernacular much more easily. You probably know that I.M. Pei house down the block that was built. It's a modern house. But, I drove by it and I took a look at it, and the difference is like night and day. That house, when you look at it, it's almost like an abstract painting, because part of it is like a shadowed, you see the side of the house and it's shadowed and it has gabled roofs on it. It almost looks like you're looking at an old shingle style house, basically. And it's perpendicular to the other section of the house. That is a house that gestures toward the vernacular of what's there, which is houses that have gabled roofs.
You're being accommodating for time. You normally typically have a 3-minute limitation. So we've been really accommodating this evening for time. If you could please wrap.
Okay. I'd like to see something better than the photo simulations that's required in the law. We can help you with producing some other orientations on this house. Your own architectural consultant is suggested it. There is no reason that they have to build an 8,750 square foot house. I've heard several different totals here tonight. They started out at 8,000, then they crept up to 8,400, then it was 8,700. It's a constrained building envelope, yes. That does not mean you have to build a house that's 111 feet long. I mean, that is making use of every inch of that building envelope that they have. And I remember hearing the architect say, I want to tell you how the volumes evolved. And you could almost see the cubes rising from the ground to occupy the total building envelope. It's not necessary.
Thank you, sir. So we have others that wish to speak.
Neil has concerns about privacy. There are balconies. He has concerns about the glare from it. And he has concerns about the shading that will happen to his house. Again, it's not enough for an architect to stand up and say, we put strips on the front windows to stop the glare. Let's get some empirical data on what it really does. We know there is, they said 9% of the side elevation facing Neil Smith's property is windows. That means there's 200 square feet of windows. That's a lot of windows. We want some data on that as well.
Thank you, sir.
Neil Smith, I live next to Jeff's
Excuse
my-
me, we need to hear the applicant, those that are speaking. Go ahead, sir, proceed.
Firstly, let me apologise to the board and also to Jeff. It was extraordinarily rude of me to interrupt him while I was doing that, and I know you said, you know, we should be very courteous. The reason I did that was because Jeff's unfortunately had a death in the family this week, and so he's only getting to speed today on this, and he made an error in the numbers that he gave you. It's actually 46 feet above sea level. The grade at that point is 9 feet 6 inches, so you have to deduct that from all of the numbers that Jeff gave you. He would never usually make a mistake like that, I don't think. I wanted to tell you just a couple of things, so just show you a couple of things. I brought my own photo just to show you that I actually took from the road, because I think, Ms. Pastor, you were asking for, I'm sorry, you were asking what the property, this is the current property, and what it looks like from the road, and I think you'll see to the left of this.
Thank you.
I'll just give you a chance to have the pictures. Did I have enough? Right. This is really just for your own observation. The privet to the left in that photograph is about 10 feet high. This is the existing privet that's there. That's the existing crown of the road. That's the existing property that's actually there at the moment. My guess is it's about 20 to 25 feet above grade. I think the new property would be about 38 feet above grade, just to give you a sense. And I think that the construction over on the right, I think, given how high it is off grade, is supposed to show where the ground floor view will be. I think we're going to ask for an adjournment because we'd like to figure a bit more of this out. But I think what this will show you, I think, is that the 10 to 12 foot high privet won't serve any useful purpose in protecting that house. And the Grossmans very kindly, I think that, by the way, that they're wonderful people, and I hope that we have a great relationship as neighbours. They very kindly shared some information with us this week, which addresses 4 concerns that I had and that I'd raised with you last time, and they responded to it during this time, which was great. But I think I remember at the last meeting I had said one of my concerns was shadow, and I know that Blaise has just recognised that shadow is a hardship, particularly in the pool area. One of the pieces of information that I said was I was afraid that shadow would come onto the pool, and I think one of the environmental folks got up at the end of the meeting and said, don't worry, with the setback being further back, it won't affect you. But the information that we got, this week, I think shows that on the best day of the year, about 25% of the day the pool will actually be shadowed. I don't want you to take that as gospel, because I think what we'd like to try and do is work with them to see what the full effect of this is, because that's only on one day of the year. And if we can together work on mitigating my personal issues for personal property, as well as the issues that the board has in terms of length of the property, maybe there's actually some value in doing that. I do know as well that I was actually approached coming out of church, believe it or not, and also on the beach by residents in Southampton. I do know that there are others who can't be here this evening, and I have 4 letters from people who also would like to ask for an adjournment. I can present them to you if you want them or not, but they've given those letters to me. I'll tell you the names of some of them. They're all Southampton residents, some of whom will be affected by the view from the pond. Lally Graham, Wayne.
Are you saying you represent these?
Yeah, I have.
Are you saying that you represent?
No. What I'm saying is they've given me letters to ask you to adjourn the meeting so that they can be here and present at the next meeting. Mm-hmm. I can't represent their views, so.
Okay.
Should I just?
Just for the record.
Yeah.
Read their names into the record, please.
Sally Graham, Victoria Kristen, Carter and Jean Kegel, Randall Giannopoulos, and that's the one.
Okay. So you're asking to be added to the file, not necessarily read into the record, correct? Mm-hmm. Sir?
Yes.
They're being asked to be added to the file, not necessarily read into the record.
Yeah. I'm very conscious of time. Don't want to spend more than my 3 minutes. That's it from me. All I would just ask is that we have the opportunity to present you with the correct information for you to make a decision.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any more public comment?
Chair, for the record, each one of these applications are requesting more time, determine scale, not having had a chance to look at the.
Excuse me, we need to hear those that are speaking at the podium.
Hi there, my name is Jeff Broadleib, 166 Halsey Street, and while not immediately affected, as this is a public hearing, I'll be as presumptuous to represent myself as the public. As someone who jogs, swims, skates around the area, in my mind, as a layman, the house will be imposing. And with all due respect to John and the rules of evidence, which I know nothing about, it would seem to me that an adjournment was requested by Mr. Smith's attorney is appropriate in as much as, a difference of a foot or two, depending on the angle and the coastline and everything else, it could be totally different. But I know nothing about that. What I see is I suspect it would be an imposing structure. And I don't think this is a Hobbesian dilemma where there is no choice. There's always a choice. And the applicant themselves represented that there are choices. So with all due respect to them, their attorneys, and the board, I would request that there also be an adjournment as well as additional information be submitted that's accurate and measurable. Thanks.
Thank you. Any more public comment? Please step forward.
Good evening. My name is Lisa LaQuarrie, President of Fine Arts and Sciences, and I'm here on behalf of Mr. Smith this evening. And I have had a short period of time to look at the application and hearing what was presented tonight. And a couple of things I wanted to comment on. One was the kind of the mantra that was repeated was that this is a very constrained lot, and that the gross floor area that would be permitted versus what is being proposed, there is much more permitted than what is being proposed. But then how does that fit in with the fact that it's a very constrained lot? Well, much of the area that is making it constrained is still used in the computation of the gross floor area. So, I mean, that's why you do get a much larger GFA according to the code than what perhaps you'd be able to do. And then when the I believe it was the owner explained that they'd like this house for their family, and how lovely to have another family come in to this neighborhood when bedrooms for all of the boys, but that this house was really only going to be something on the order of 5,000 square feet usable floor area, even though it was more than 8,000 square feet when it was laid out this way. And there were some other breezeways and some other things kind of bringing it back up to that, but that wasn't really going to be usable for the bedrooms and for the family and so forth. That, to me, it seems like there's something else that can be done, and something that would be really very helpful for the owner, something that the owner would like to do, something that the neighborhood would like. There's plenty of other ways to design within this building envelope, with meeting all the constraints, and to also respect the style, the historic style, the Gin Lane houses, the very thing that you're here to preserve and to protect. Another point, and just kind of clarification, so that I believe the grade elevation, natural grade, is around 9, and then you're in the VE 17, so then you go up to 19 before you get started with building. But the trees, there wasn't going to be the fill, right? Wasn't that what we heard? There wasn't going to be the fill up to the 19 before you start. So the trees and the vegetation are going to be planted at 9 feet at grade. So even if they're going up 10 feet, 12 feet, even 26, although I haven't really seen how you're going to be getting that 26-foot tree in that small place and how it would grow, more things to look at. That's not shielding even, you're not even getting above the first story. Then you're going to be having the second story decks and, being able to stand out in that area, looking out over all the neighbors' pools, the neighbors', property all over. And it's not really something that has proposed to be screened. There's very little room on the easterly side. It was described that there's very little room on that because of the constrained building envelope. But therefore, there's the parking, there's the 4-car garage, there's the turnaround for it, there's the garbage collection, and there's a privet hedge. That's all it's going to be between that and the property line. You virtually have improvement, and heavy improvement, cars turning around, the garbage truck turning around, whatever it is, right up to the boundary of that property, with the potential for, a privet hedge right on that line, not even very much line. When you look at the grading plans and the
You're saying because of the operation of the garage and the turning that you need to do is limiting the screening, is that correct?
yes.
Okay, and you also want a certification of the grade that's being final to,
Yes.
anything else?
Sorry, I don't mean if I'm keep on repeating. And I believe that.
I'm not interrupting, I just want to clarify what you're asking.
Okay. Yes. No. Thank you. That is correct, and that there needs to be more opportunity to get more of the information to properly evaluate this. There was new information that was submitted tonight that no one has had an opportunity to review, plus the other things that the code has required would be most helpful in resolving these concerns.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Any more public comment? Zach, Historic District, and you have not had the opportunity to speak this evening. Any comments?
Very briefly, we have had and we still have modern architecture being submitted, and I think this is a real challenge to evaluate modern structures in the context of what is harmonious and appropriate to be inserted into a historic district. This is perhaps one of the greatest challenges your board has. I should make a plug for a training workshop that the Village of Southampton has been funded to host on that very topic, which you'll all be attending in September.
Thank you.
Because this continues to be a big challenge. I think it was appropriate for the guidelines to be brought here. That is not the code, that's not the law, but those guidelines are important. They assist everyone, applicants, owners, boards, in assessing how to use the code to govern and judge what is being introduced. It's been said that modern architecture has been built in the village before. Some of it's 80 years old. It's accepted, it's valued, it's understood. So I don't think there should be a rush to judgment here. I think there are challenges visually for how much of the width of the lot is occupied by this. That's quite different from another proposal that we'll be looking at. But I think this should be evaluated further, and I think there are elements of it that are quite good and quite harmonious. So, reserving judgment.
I just want to make it clear for the record, because I don't want to let this record close, that I am requesting additional time so that we can deal with the new material that was submitted today and give you some of our own materials that answers some of the issues that you raised about reconfiguring it and issues of design and shading, privacy, and reflection. I'd like to have the opportunity to do that. We have a team that we can put to work, and we'd like to put them to work to help you.
Thank you. Anything from the applicant?
Just briefly, revised landscape plans were, the plans were amended and they were submitted. Elevations were added and submitted. Comparative elevation drawings were submitted. I don't know, maybe Jeff hasn't had time to look at that. They're all to scale. I don't want that to go unstated. There's a grading plan. It's been on the survey since the beginning of the application. It's there for anyone to look at because it was the grading plan that was approved by the ZBA because they were very interested in grading. So I see this is going to be adjourned. That's fine. I understand. The board has to struggle with this, and there's some new information that we've submitted, but I don't want it to be left unstated. We have complied with all the submission requirements. If there are ways in which, even though we've complied with them, there are ways in which the objectants think that they are lacking, then it's up to them. I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Board members' suggestion of the chair that we, because of the information we have, the additional information that was given this evening, that we do take a little more time in evaluating it, taking all commentary in consideration. There have been a number of neighbors and people in the community who just want a little more time to come up with whatever they feel is their defense to maybe alternative architecture or even some challenges that may particularly be with shadowing and privacy. You know, this board is extremely nervous about privacy, so those are elements that most certainly we take under we take very seriously. So because of all of the things that we've heard this evening, I think that we should adjourn until the next meeting. Brian, do you have any issue with that?
No.
Christine?
No.
Ham?
Nope.
Esther?
I agree.
Anything further from the public? Just some time for adjournment. Motion to approve applicant's request to adjourn.
I make a motion that we approve the applicant at 450 Gin Lane request to adjourn to our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let me just look at it. We'll take a couple of minutes while the room clears.
Can I ask you just a point of order? A lot of people. So this one's adjourned. Is 40 going to come up again today or no? It's over. It's over.
Closed.
The hordes can go.
Yes.
Great. All right. Thanks very much.
Take care.
Mr. Chair, next application.
Wait, just give a second while we die down. If we can, if those that need to make any discussion, if you could please take it out into the hallway. We're unable to hear the next applicant, and we have to call the order.
Right. Next application, Mr. Chair. David and Sylvia Herma, 51 Pond Lane, for construction of two-story house.
Mr. Chairman, board members, for the applicant, Steve Lemansky, Southampton Engineering Services. At our last meeting, we had some comments from the board regarding the elevations, and we've appropriately removed some things that shouldn't be there and added some things that should. We've resubmitted revised elevations in addition to...
They were received when?
Excuse me?
They were received when?
I think they were there before noon this morning.
No, we were there
No, I don't think
before noon, and they weren't there.
It's not stamped.
Steve, what were the changes?
Just give us a second while we find the plans that he's referring to.
No, that's not that. That was the previous one. There were photos, there was landscaping plans.
This file?
Sorry, this whole add-on is a...
I didn't see that.
Take that. Just verify that you have your plans here. August 25th.
We removed the overhangs that wrapped around the side of the porches, spread the chimneys apart a little further, changed the side light windows on the front door from ovals to squares, added corner boards. And I'm pretty sure that was the extent of the comments. I have some extras. Do you have these in the file?
Please hand us.
It should be a text note. At last meeting, I told you we were struggling with the fact that the house was
Thank you.
skewed off the front street. And we've taken the house, and I haven't turned it directly onto parallel the street, but we've moved it a little bit more than 50% of it. So it's slightly skewed off the street, but it's in more conformance. And we have this photo that shows the actual. It's actually twisted off the front of the street, so you can see it. For all intents and purposes, it kind of looks like it's going straight on. There's a landscape plan in the file that reflects that. Also, I want you to note that the ridge of the house next door is our ridge is 2.5 feet lower than the ridge of the house next door. The landscape plan. Is there copies of the landscape plan in that file? There you go. You can see it has moved back towards being square to the street, but slightly off. Readjusted the rear yard, the pool, but this now shows the plantings. We had some comments from the neighbor to our rear who was just suggesting a little bit of taller trees in the back, so we've accommodated them by putting those in. And we show the,
Steve, sorry, the parking is in the front on this site plan?
yes.
In the end, okay.
Yeah, so we've actually, in your old plan, we flipped this house 180 degrees because in skewing the house, we couldn't, if you looked on the old plan, Ham, if you see here, the driveway came around like this and in. But by trying to skew it back onto the street, there was really no room for the cars to come in. So we've actually just flipped it, and the front is symmetrical, so from the street view, it doesn't.
Question I have, the front driveway, which we try to keep parking away from the front of a house, but what is the elevation, just for curiosity, of the
Oh, this
parking
is- yeah, this
platform
is-
and the crown of the road?
Yeah, well,
About 12 feet?
this is about 8 feet above
8
the,
feet, okay.
above the crown of the road, and there's privet there as well, that's to remain. And there's also, right now, there is 3 spots that are here, that
Okay.
exist right here.
So you're organizing the existing parking.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And now we're using the main driveway, which goes back to a flag to come and entrance into our driveway, our garage here, as opposed to coming around in this way. And that was just driven by the fact that we tried to get this turned towards the street.
Okay.
That's all we asked for changes last time.
Brian, comments?
What's your roof material, Steve?
It's gonna be a cedar shakes.
Okay, because in the rendering, it looks like asphalt.
Asphalt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Good to hear. I appreciate all the changes that you made. You've done everything I needed to see.
Great.
Esther?
A lot of improvements. I'm a little bit challenged because I'm looking at the original survey with the proposed house. I'm just trying to understand all the changes. No, I've got
Okay.
that. But based on this one,
Mhm.
I'm just trying to cross-reference the two to understand what you've done. But I think you've addressed everything we've asked for.
Thanks.
Ham?
I'd like to see there's no freeze board on this. Are you planning on having one? You have a fascia soffit, is there a freeze? Is
You know,
it
we
terrain
haven't-
following?
It's possible to have that, and I'm
Okay.
not opposed to that.
All right. And are these corner boards that you have, is it painted shingles, or is it hardy plank?
No, that's gonna be some type of a board. We haven't got the material,
Okay,
but it'll
but
be a
it-
white painted board.
Okay, but the shingles are individual shingles that are painted, are they wood?
Yes.
Are they cedar or
Yep,
Maybach?
they're cedar.
Okay. And the shutters that you're showing, are they functional or
Yes.
decorative?
Yes, and in our first application, we had more windows, which we've eliminated
Uh-huh.
and sized them so that the shutters could be functional.
Right. The only thing I'd like to see is perhaps is a fascia, or freeze detail that is particularly careful when you're over the 2 center windows over the front door. Maybe that's incorporated with the head casing. The dormers up top, are those sized as they're going to be, or they look a little
Yeah,
out of proportion?
Actually, we had them larger, and at one of the comments from the board, we made them smaller, and we
Okay.
moved them up the roof. They were a little further down the roof, and they were actually connected. It was almost like a triple
Okay.
dormer.
Right. And you offset them a little bit, or is that skewed on the drawing?
Mhm.
How many degrees does the house skewed from from Pond Lane?
I think it was 22.
Really? Okay, so you're
Mhm.
facing to the northeast a little bit more? In other words, which side swung? Towards the east? How'd you
The
ask?
south part of the house was further away than the.
Moved it closer.
Yeah, we moved it closer to
So
the
you
street.
projected the
Yeah, we used this as the
northeast side.
as the pivot. Yeah.
Got it, okay.
I mean, I think it looks good from the street. Even we took the photo and put it into AutoCAD and shifted it on the elevation to try to give you an exact look of what it would look like from the street.
Christine, you weren't here at the last meeting.
I remember the meeting before that, but I appreciate the changes that have been made. I think it looks much better.
The internal cataloging, everything's complete?
Yeah, we took the roof off and then they had everything marked and we took all the interior walls out. All the cataloging is complete. There's one part of the old original frame that's up. Today they were taking up all the old floorboards that were underneath another floor. So it was taking off one layer of flooring and taking the other layer of flooring off. So they've got a frame to take. I think they're going to be about another week. And then we're going to try to carefully get all the sill material and the floor joists up as well. So we're surgically removing everything. So they'll have pretty much every single piece of wood that was 100 years old or older will be salvaged.
No issues with the design. You've accommodating for the most part every concern that this board has had, even to a point of shifting the house so that it's a little more symmetrical to the street. I would have had an issue with the driveway if it wasn't already existing in that manner. So you're really complying to what exists, not necessarily creating a new element. Zach, any questions, comments, issues?
Well, my primary issue from the last meeting was trimming those shed roof porches back, and I think that's better design. I do have just a concern for consistency's sake that your plan drawings, numbers 3 and 4 for the first and second floor, still reflect the tripartite fenestration that had been presented in the original design.
Correct that.
Of August. And so it is not consistent with these pairs of windows. It shows a bank of 3 windows in section. And I think that'll be confusing.
Okay.
I mean, I
we'll change
presume
that.
you'll be building to this, but to the code fellows that go out and try to make some sense out of this, they're looking at
Those changes been made on larger renderings and just knocked down on the smaller, or?
No, we were at this point more concerned with your front elevation and our plan layout and our
So
landscape
exterior
plan,
speaking.
so I can change all those.
Okay, so file's not complete just yet.
One
However,
final thing on your first floor plan, I'm sorry, is that you do have posts, or what I would call piers, centered on either of your flanking porches and windows. They don't appear on your first floor plan porch. So those are just some little drawing consistencies.
Can you indicate the depth of the eaves, the projection?
Sure.
Also of the trim details and the crown, top of the head casing, and how it comes
Sure,
into
we'll do a blown-up detail
how
on
it
that.
comes into the frieze. Brackets, those 5 ponds or something equal?
Probably 5 ponds.
Steve, one other thing, can we get an update on the survey of what you're proposing now? Because I think this is
Sure.
the last one we have in the file.
Yeah, we did submit it this way.
Yeah, so I'd like that.
any public comment on the application? Please step forward.
Steve, one other thing, sorry. On the shutters, on the southeast elevation of the house, are you putting shutters in there, or is it just on the east elevation?
Right now, it's
See
just
the
on the east
inset?
elevation.
Okay, is it
But
'cause
but
they
I
don't-
think if we're gonna see it from the street, we can add them.
Okay, well, you will see it from the southeast, from the road.
Okay.
And as well as you're going
Down
north,
south. Yep, okay.
west.
Great.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Good evening, Evelyn Conrad. I'm not here to debate the issue at all. I simply want to give you a small caveat. There is a legal opinion being prepared right now by a part of our government about the legality of your reversing the decision about the landmarking. So if I were you, I would be a little cautious, and perhaps, no matter what your enthusiasm for the property might be, I would hold off if I were you. It's not my business. Thank you very much. The opinion will be available shortly.
Any additional public comment? Anything further from the board? I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm sorry. Anything further from the board?
No.
All right. Application's not complete just yet, so we're still looking for some additional information. You'll have it at our next meeting, correct? All right. You were asking the board to adjourn, so not necessarily for an opinion, but for Motion to adjourn. Motion to approve applicant's request to
I make a
adjourn.
motion that we approve the applicant David and Sylvia Hama at 51 Pony Lane. Request to adjourn to our next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next application, please.
436 Gin Lane for demolition of existing structure.
Good evening. My name is John Bennett, and I'm here as well as Bailey Larkin, both here from Bennett and Reed.
Excuse me, John, I need to recuse myself.
Okay. I've handed up the affidavits of notice. This is an application of the property at 436 Gin Lane for a hardship or lack of reasonable return application to the board. The board did, by decision filed on August 4th, deny the application for a certificate of appropriateness, but it did
Sorry, John. For the record, affidavit of posting, affidavit of mailing with the return receipts, 5 neighbors.
In the certificate of appropriateness, the board did specifically leave, as per the code, for another day the financial hardship or lack of reasonable return as per section 65(8). We had in the past submitted, as far as I'm concerned, everything that is necessary to decide the hardship hearing, including significant engineering as well as economic testimony. We have resubmitted all of that by our application dated July 29th, 2014. We have, in addition to these significant submissions, I think probably the best proof that I've ever seen in going through the records in support of an application of hardship or reasonable return, 2 very short affidavits which were submitted today, both of which are from the top brokers in the village, Harold Grant and Tim Davis. And again, just reiterating their statements in their February affidavits that they have not been able to fetch any offer on the property, and this isn't a very strong market, other than a offer which was subject to a demolition permit. Now, the best test of a fair market value is what a willing and able buyer is willing to pay the sellers. So here you have this property has been listed for 10 months, and there has been no offer whatsoever.
What's the listing price?
The listing price is $18 million, which is $19 million. 18 was paid for it. There have been Scott Bomber himself, and I ask that you incorporate by reference all of the evidence and testimony in the prior portion of this application. I think that's inherent.
So the original purchase price was
18.
18. What
18.
date? What year?
2006, 2007, yeah. And again, I submit that there's no better test of the fair market value than what a willing and able buyer is willing to pay the sellers. And as Mr. Bomber himself testified, and this is in February, the best offer he obtained was $16.5 million, and that again was subject to a demolition permit. So I just wanted you to these affidavits to bring you up to date that even in a very, very strong real estate market that has more than made up for the 2008 correction, there's no one willing to purchase the property without the benefit of the demolition permit. As Mr. Grant states in his affidavit, and this is echoed by the conversations that I've had by many counsel for prospective purchasers, the reasons stated by those initially interested are the uncertainty about the ability to remove and demolish the single-family residence, and the lack of physical integrity of the property, and the huge difference in what it would cost to even attempt to refurbish the property or refurnish the property, including the regulatory uncertainty in doing so, as opposed to constructing new improvements. Now, this is something that I talked about the last time. In addition to one of the things that totally scares off buyers is the fact that no one knows what can be done with the property other than to demolish the property. It is non-compliant from a FEMA point of view. It's non-compliant from a dune crest point of view. It's non-compliant from a coastal erosion hazard point of view. So, for example, under the coastal erosion hazard law, anytime you want to improve the property by more than 50%, you have to comply with the coastal erosion hazard law. Under the FEMA regulations, anytime you want to improve the property by more than 50%, you have to retrofit and lift the house and make it all comply with the FEMA obligations. There is a provision in the law for relief from the FEMA requirements for historic structure, but you still have to meet that standard. It's not an automatic standard, and there is no provision in the coastal erosion hazard law for any relief for historic structures. So this, in addition to the fact that no one knows what can be done with the property, and of course the significantly deteriorated condition of the property has made the property in effect unsaleable. I would suggest to you that the best proof of that, again, is the affidavits from the brokers. This is just the truth, and there's no need to go further. It's a sort of a self-evident sort of truth. Many comments were made about the lack of integrity of the property at this certificate of appropriateness hearing, and I think they bear, even though the board was hesitant to hear them, I think they do nevertheless bear on the lack of reasonable return. So again, you should incorporate the reference, by reference, the testimony, or incorporate the testimony from the last hearing, last portion of the Chapter 65 hearing into this. So, for example, there was testimony in addition to reports from Mr. Lemansky as well as Mr. Bedford about the integrity of the house, and of course from Mr. Bomber about his inability to sell the house. I know also there was some comment about self-created hardship. The only time I've ever seen self-created hardship become a factor in zoning law is in variance standards. I don't see any other case law, so it's an irrelevancy. It's not a factor that's to be looked into in terms of the lack of reasonable return or economic hardship. It's not one of the criteria in your code. And even in the sections of the zoning code, if one were to apply law by example, which you can't, but even if, assuming arguendo, you could, even in those situations, self-created hardship is not in and of itself reason to deny an application. Mr. Krupinski, as well recognized and with as much integrity as any builder on the East End, has two affidavits, one from March 24th, 2014, and another one from June 10th. We've submitted those into the record, including estimates of renovating the house, the existing house, and comparing that with constructing a new house on the property. The cost differential is prohibitive. And I want to remind the board that at the specific request of Mr. Hoag, we did take out what Mr. Hoag referred to as normal wear and tear and maintenance and service items. So that we took that out. I just want to, but even with that, the comparison.
You cleaned it up.
Yeah, well, we did. I mean, you can argue about it, but even I said, you know what? Let's take it out. Yeah. You know, and even with that, it's over $2 million. And I would suggest that as a matter of law, that's conclusive proof of the lack of reasonable return here. Indeed, as Mr. Krupinski says, the house in what I would conservatively say is in very poor state of repair. I'm quoting from Mr. Krupinski because he says it best. Even with someone with a slight knowledge of the construction business is aware that it almost always costs significantly more to construct a new residence than to remodel and repair. One encounters items after items in this house of deterioration, lack of material integrity, and fatigue. As we can see, there's a significant difference of over $2 million to build new and to attempt, even taking out the service items, to attempt to refigure this house.
Well,
Quoting
Mr. Be more than
that. I'm trying to be conservative. I think it would be double, but I wanted to, Plus, again, I keep on coming back to the hold card fact that no one wants to buy the house, non-contingent. I've had many conversations, not only with the buyers for the house and their counsel, but they're all concerned about the lack of a demolition permit and what can be done as a matter of right to the property. Cost factor aside, it's FEMA compliant. We went to the Coastal Erosion Hazard Law, the FEMA. It's also important to understand one of the objections, as a matter of fact, the only objectant that appeared in person in the certificate of appropriateness hearing talked about Mr. Bomber's wealth.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Bomber's wealth.
Irrelevant.
Thank you. It's a project-based or property-based analysis. It doesn't matter whether it's the richest man in the world or... thank you. Thank you. Under Section 65, the question is whether or not the property is incapable of earning a reasonable return. I think we've more than adequately demonstrated that. The only other out, so to speak, is whether or not the property can be adapted for a different use. And the only time I've seen the village allow that is on the Foster application, where I think ultimately they granted the application. This is, forgive me if I don't have the years right, it's the 1770 house. I think it's Boyd Ralph's house. The Foster family came in. They actually granted the application, but then the village was able to work with them and essentially, I don't know if it's de facto, but essentially change the property into a motel district. And that's not applicable here. You have zoning regulations, coastal erosion, dune crest setback, health department restrictions on density that wouldn't make that something that would be all achievable on this site. And I don't think an application to put a multifamily motel use at the end of Gin Lane would fare very well. So that's simply what's not applicable here. Again, we've shown that the coastal erosion, FEMA, and health department requirements are a challenge. There are 4 separate engineers' reports. There's a mold analysis prepared by Eastern Environmental Solutions. The board will also remember that I actually submitted some physical examples of the state of deterioration of the property. The toe tag stuff, exactly. There was a rotted collar girder and actually a piece of the I-beam that goes underneath the actually the addition to the east. I want to read so that it's clear. I know this seems boring, but it's important to get in the record because this paragraph and the paragraph after it are to the point. Excessive settlement has already occurred and is likely, this is from Gillespie's report. Excessive settlement has already occurred and is likely to continue due to soil conditions, rot, and poor maintenance. The structure needs extensive work and rebuilding is not an option. The existing structure cannot be maintained while trying to perform the work to rebuild. To reach the main house supports that have caused the settlement, the structural issues addressed in this report, the main structure must be taken down. Simply put, the main house must be taken apart and removed to access the interior supports that have rotted out and caused the settlement that threatens to collapse the house. The glass addition is so severely deteriorated and damaged that it must be taken down to avoid a catastrophic failure. For these reasons, our evaluation concludes the only viable option is to take the house down rather than attempt to repair or replace it piece by piece. Then there's a Frederick McCarthy report by the Lewis Berger Group, which is an international engineering firm. I didn't mess around in creating the record here. I wanted you to make sure that you had not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 reports, and one of them from Lewis Berger Group is a firm with, I believe, an international firm with about 2,000 engineers. So they're not going to make up evidence to suit my requests. The conclusions are very telling, and they dovetail perfectly with what I've said about the structure. This quoting from the report, the magnitude of the work required to restore the residence after decades of inconsistent settling and to return the structure to livable conditions is excessive and may be cost prohibitive in comparing total demolition and rebuild options. There it is. That's really all there is to say about it. I can go on and on about the other conclusions left in the engineers' reports, but you've seen them, you've had them. They've actually been, some of them have been in the record for 7 months now. Finally, the board is very insistent, and I think wisely so, although it's irritating sometimes, that you try to make nice, so to speak, with the neighbors. You try to take into account the neighbors' concerns. This is not this is not a house that has created some sort of cause célèbre against construction, against demolition. We looked at the file today. Bailey looked at the file today in the village's offices, and there was no submission whatsoever in opposition. And I want to I want to remind the board that there were letters in support of the application on the from the very, very get-go on this, but most important, there are letters of support from the neighbor to the west and the neighbor to the east. So I think that's important, again. So this is not a situation where the neighbors are all concerned about granting the applications to the contrary. The neighbors are supportive of the application. Again, no comments or letters in the file as of this afternoon. This has been a long, very trying, very frustrating process. My client has essentially been backed into a corner. There's simply nothing else he can do. He's tried in good faith to market this house, and every single offer I spoke 5 days ago, I spoke to Mary Jane Asada, who was representing a purchaser, and went through the whole panoply of why she couldn't advise her client to do the deal without a demolition permit. These are the hard and fast facts. I'm
John, I have a question.
Sure.
You have a letter here from Bruce Grossman. I think he was the owner of the previous application.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, just to clarify.
Yeah.
And he has no opposition to demolishing this house?
Right. And then there's something from Ann Barris. She's down the road. But if you'd skip to the last one, I think that's most important. Ira Drucker. He's to the west, and he has no.
These are the same guys that you spoke to the last
Yep,
time around?
same guys.
Okay. Thank you.
Dale and I have no objection to the demolition of the house and the property at that site.
And Doyle Smith.
And Smith.
Got it. All right, thanks, John.
Zach, comments?
Just a couple. One having to do with the affidavits of the real estate brokers, and I don't doubt that this expresses their true experience and feelings. But I would say that there are other historic buildings in this village which could be regarded as encumbering otherwise buildable property by virtue of the fact that they're standing there. So, and the uncertainty, to kind of paraphrase, the uncertainty and the fear that a prospective buyer might feel vis-a-vis the purchase of the property, not knowing whether the existing structure could be demolished or not, is a fact of life. That's a given. In a locality in which the land value is so excessively heated up, you might say, in that parlance. So that, to me, especially when one of the brokers has the listing, which I read today, and it extols the values of the property at 19.9. So
who is that?
Tim Baker.
If him?
So
Tim Davis.
Tim,
No. There was a listing by a circular by Zach and Cody, I believe their names are, and that was.
So Tim Davis. No, I'm talking about the Corcoran listing.
Okay. There's a Corcoran listing that was removed a long time ago.
Okay. I'm only going by what I see. It's sort of in the public domain.
Yeah.
More importantly, I'm a little concerned about the generalities that are accepted about these big old wooden houses down on the beach and how they just seem to weather away after all these years. And that's certainly true if a structure is not adequately maintained and repaired, perhaps as it's might be impacted by storms, etc. And we have seen other structures on the beach which come with ample evidence to the effect that no repairs have been made, this thing is sunken into the sand, and there's nothing that reasonably can be done. I think there's something critically different here. The present owner and applicant for demolition acquired this property in January of 2006. This is not that long ago. I'd be very curious to see, and I would assume that as the purchaser of a rather expensive piece of real estate, which is improved with more than one structure, did his diligence and discovered that these structures are in fact considered contributing resources in the historic district, whatever that may mean, you find out. Secondly, if you're spending $18 million and change on a property on the beach, I would assume you'd have an engineer inspect the property prior to purchase. I think it would be useful for your board to see what the condition, to have the applicant present to you what the condition of the property was when it was purchased by a willing buyer and a very willing seller for over $18 million some 7 or 8 years ago. My feeling is that the hardship clause in the code presumably provides relief in economic situations. It would most certainly address someone who finds themselves with a property that has been substantially damaged. Perhaps Sandy came along and wiped half it away, and they are then put in a position of having to significantly reconstruct or reestablish something at great personal expense to meet the code. And that would, to me, be a potentially valid economic hardship to do that. What we're talking about here, I believe, is an individual who willingly paid an exorbitant amount of money for a piece of property. It would be interesting to know what the property was valued at in 2006. There are ways of determining that. It would be interesting to know what the physical condition of the building was at that time, to make a determination whether or not this particular owner overpaid for the property. Wouldn't be the first time. I love the view. I just love the view. I want a piece on the beach. Why not? So I think we have some generalities and some assertions about how these buildings fall apart on the beach when we're not really comparing it to anything finite within the history of ownership of this particular applicant who is seeking relief from what arguably could be considered to be an unfortunate investment in real estate. That's my perspective.
If I can respond. Okay. First of all, there is no concept of self-created hardship in your code about this. What you do is you look at the property and you determine whether or not there's a reasonable lack of return. What everyone seems to keep, well, I'm sorry, what I keep harping on, and it's important, is the fact that no one is willing to buy the property, period, without the condition of a demolition permit. No one. It's clearly to Mr. Baumer has had the property on the market for over 10 months. He has had no offers to purchase the property. And there's no better proof of the lack of reasonable return than having two very assertive, very aggressive, very competitive, very successful brokers trying to market this property. I will testify myself that I have had conversations with innumerable lawyers for prospective purchasers. The first thing they said is, can you get me a demo permit? All of them. So the property has, in effect, become unsaleable. In terms of due diligence, there's no question one of the elements of your denial of the certificate of appropriateness was the fact that there was a 1951 by the then unlicensed Philip Johnson. Okay, that appears nowhere in the record. You can go down to the village list. I do it all the time. I look through those files to make sure that my client isn't purchasing something. This was on a list. There was no identification of this addition as a Philip Johnson addition. It doesn't appear in any of the literature except one book, which and the fact that it was a Philip Johnson edition only became apparent at when the application was made to tear it down. So there's no self-created hardship or issue there. What I keep saying about these houses, and I understand what Zach's point is, you don't want somebody to be able to come in and say, the house is old, okay? And therefore, you should let me tear it down. Because there are many houses where that would be inappropriate. For example, and people have come in and worked with you, and I have counseled them to come in and work with you. And in those cases, many times some great things have resulted. For example, Bill Black's dad, the Eugene Black House on Lake Agawam, okay? That was pretty well preserved. You were fairly liberal in allowing some significant changes to that, some fenestration changes that change the materials on the roof. There are many examples where you have allowed that. But as I say to people all the time, it all depends upon how the property is maintained. I understand your counsel's hesitance to say, to allow somebody to come in here and just say, the house is old, you have to let me tear it down, because many of these houses are well preserved. This is not one of them. And all I can do, I could give you another 5 engineers' reports, and they would come to the same conclusion. Mr. Lemansky is here. He'll answer any questions that you have at the property, but I don't think you need to go there. You have 4 engineers' reports. This is a house in horrible state of repair, rife with mold, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We've demonstrated to you the lack of reasonable return in many ways. We've showed how much it would cost to build a new house there, how much it would cost to try to take this house apart. You're going to end up with nothing other than a replica. And I understand why you want to be careful when you grant this relief, but I have given you so much, more than enough evidence to take this house down. I've even asked you guys to come over and look at the house. I think some of you have. I think Mr. Hoag's looked at the house. I think some other people have looked at the house. And the condition of the house speaks for itself. I agree. You want to be sparing with how you allow this to happen. But when you have a house that simply cannot be rebuilt, and you'll end up with a replica at most, and pose this unnecessary cost on an applicant who has demonstrated beyond any sort of cavil that this house he cannot have anywhere near a reasonable rate of return. At this point, for 10 months, he hasn't had any return on the property. He came in, was very honest with you, testified to that himself, gave you affidavits. I would simply ask that you have more than enough here to make a determination. Take into consideration Mr. Studenwald's comments. Given you more than enough facts, please close this hearing and give me a decision after, of course, you hear from the public as to whether or not they have any comment. Again, I didn't see any negative comment. The only comment that you have so far.
Are you okay, Miss? You sure?
I'm fine.
Okay.
Sorry.
Any public comment on the application? Please step forward.
I'm not here for the application, but I'm in real estate, and I can only say, essentially, they're asking
Your
too
name
much
for the
money.
record. Your
My
name
name's
for-
Judy Maisels.
Okay.
But I'm also reminded of the late 70s and the early 80s, the last boom where the economics was like this. And everybody took these old houses that were just like this on, all the streets, and they made them, they restored them, they renovated them, and they're all beautiful. And we always said the best thing about the 80s is they made this houses safe for the next 50 years. So I think we should think about taking the boom with all these people with money and work more about preserving. And so it costs them a little bit more. They've got the money.
Thank you.
Just the address of the speaker, if I may.
She's willing to give it. If she's willing to give it, are you willing to give your address? The applicant asked for your address.
My address?
Yes.
Yeah, Pelletreau Street.
Okay.
Please. Can't force her.
Hi, I'm Jeff Broadley, 166 Halsey Street, and once again I feel compelled to speak for the public, presumptuous as that may be. While Mr. Bennett provided an excellent definition of market value of a house, I think Zach accurately pointed out that a ready and willing buyer determines the market value, but there's also a time component. And what was paid for then doesn't mean you're going to return that now. People lose money in real estate. It's not the town's obligation or...
The village, by the way.
I'm sorry, the village, the town and the village, thank you, to make people whole on that. That's the risk people take. Presumably there's due diligence. The property has value. I dare say there are actually some people in the town who are thinking of creating a residential trust to buy houses just like this. So there is a buyer out there. It's just a matter of what price.
Thank you.
Address?
And he did give it.
What was it?
He did give it.
I did.
What was your address?
166 Halsey Street.
Okay, thank you.
Any more public comment? Ham, comments?
Nope.
Esther?
Yep.
Christine? Any issues with the application as it has been presented?
No.
No.
First time hearing the application, do you think we should lay over to reevaluate the information that was given, just so that we have a complete understand, just so we have a complete understanding by everyone on this board, because so we don't get anyone saying that we rush to a
Absolutely.
decision.
No. You're not making a decision tonight. You have all you need to evaluate it. Everyone has spoken. You asked everyone if they spoke.
Understand
There was
it.
no
I'm still
negative comment,
speaking
and
with
I
the
would
board,
just
John.
like you to close
I'm
the
speaking to
hearing.
the board. Let me finish speaking with the board. So, nothing further from the board?
No.
Nothing further from the public? Zach, anything further?
I'm not sure where my recommendation's going.
Where your recommendation is going?
Yeah.
The applicant's asking for the application to be closed, not necessarily for a written decision.
Right.
But for us to evaluate the information as it stands, I think the
Well, I just suggested that we might request something additional of the applicant.
which was a evaluation of the original.
engineer's report that was rendered at the time of purchase.
Okay.
Because that would give us a benchmark that would compare
That's
what
assuming that there were one.
I would presume that one purchasing a large Victorian wooden house on the beach for $18.3 million might have a professional opinion associated with it, or it would be good to know.
I've got a
not.
better idea. You have a
Unless
board
their-
member who is
unless
aware
their
of the
intent
condition.
was to demolish it to begin with.
I didn't say that.
Okay.
I don't think it would be of any, I appreciate the point that you're making. I think it's a good one. But in this case, that would have been almost, what, 9 years ago?
6 years ago.
6 years ago, I'm sorry. 6 years ago.
7, I'm saying that I don't see
think with
that
the
anything
four-
significant in the way of additional piling set in the sand. The applicant has not constructed anything new. I don't think we've heard that any of the several engineers, all of whom are quite capable, observed that there was any structural or material intervention to further shore up the house. It's been maintained, it's been made attractive, et cetera.
Right.
So there have not been, to our knowledge, or at least to my reading of these 5 or 6 or more engineering reports, that the owner applicant has done anything structural that changed what it looks like.
But you
Things have
saw
rotted a
you
little
saw
bit.
an engineer saying that it
Therefore,
was
I'm not-
impossible.
Excuse me, guys.
John,
One thing I do remember, Zach, because I was thinking about the same thing as the direction that you're going in a few times. There are 2 engineers' reports that is, essentially establish the pile supports, the lack of pile caps, and the lack of anything
Yeah,
holding up.
very definitely. My
Which-
only
yeah,
point
just to-
being-
I'm not trying to defend
No.
this in any means
I'm
whatsoever.
just feeling that this board would have a better basis to judge what the applicant bought than to say that these old houses fall apart on the beach. Because the structural condition of that house is arguably very much what it was today on the day that it was purchased by the applicant.
And what does
And
that
I-
have to do with anything? Let's talk about that, because what does that have to do with anything?
Materially changes the argument.
No, it doesn't.
that the applicant is now experiencing a hardship.
No, it doesn't, because there is
Really?
no concept of self-created hardship in these applications.
The only creation of hardship is the applicant's decision to
I
sell.
understand. Well, actually, we're getting information and feedback from our historical
Somebody needs to
consultant.
speak, and then somebody else needs to speak. Can't have 2 people continually interrupting each other.
Well, I'm just reminding you that I think that would be helpful
Usually how debates go.
in determining.
This isn't a debate. This is an administrative hearing.
I understand.
So
And if I may, you have a board member who is as aware of the condition of this house over the last 40 years and has testified to it, not testified to it, has made comment to that throughout the hearings.
With due respect to that, so Zach, what you're looking for is to have an affidavit or some sort of knowledge that the board made an attempt to gather an engineer's report from the original purchase in 05 or 06. Is that correct? For the record?
No, I don't think it's an attempt for the record. What I'm saying is that since this property changed hands so recently, in the scheme of things, in the history of the house, it's my judgment that the actual physical condition of the building is not materially different from the condition that it was in when it was acquired by the present owner.
I see.
And there is nothing in the engineer's reports that suggests that there has been some catastrophic event that has added to the deterioration of this building in recent times, nor is there any submission that any
Just to
structural-
simplify things, you're saying that
any
he purchased it
structural
for $18 million 6-7 years ago. What happened in the last 7 years to devalue it?
Precisely.
Is that what you're saying?
And the engineer's report that very likely accompanied the purchase of the property then would be a very useful piece of information to look at.
How is that relevant? It's only should be come in if it's relevant.
Mr. You agree with our historic consultant, Ham?
I think that any time any additional information is given, it's helpful. However, with that being said, the 4 engineers' reports, 3 of which are more accurate than the 4th, were very helpful in letting me look at both structures, if you will. Also, the history, personal history I have, knowing the previous owners, having seen the property over the years, doesn't make it completely necessary for me to look at that. I do understand your point of how important it is buyer beware and so forth, what the engineering report would have been on a pessimistic side at purchase.
Might likely have been.
As
Certainly would
opposed
have been
to,
photographs.
as opposed to this position, it would be on sale or on destruction. No question there's going to be a major difference. I don't think it would be enough to change where my position is on this. In fact, I'm sure it won't.
I don't really understand how it's relevant.
Why it's relevant is that if you have a willing buyer and a willing seller, and an assessment is done, it could be an old pot. It doesn't matter what it is. Someone's going to look at it and assess it and render an opinion as to its condition. Think of it as a painting. It's a historical artifact. It's a building, it's a painting, whatever. It comes with condition issues. It's something that's old. The point is, this changed hands relatively recently in the history of this building, and generalities are used to say, well, that's what happens to old houses that are exposed to in these conditions. What I'm saying is that if you have an individual who is willing to pay X amount of money for a building in such and such a condition, who then returns here to this same venue and says, well, geez, this is the condition it's in, but now I can't sell it for what I paid for it. And therefore, that's an economic hardship to me. I think one interpretation of that might be, well, maybe you overpaid. So it is not the village's role to make the purchaser in real estate whole. And I think it is important to compare what the condition was then to the condition now and to come to a judgment. Because why should the village be responsible for rectifying that investment?
If I may, the village code says
we're still-
is that inquiry.
Hold on.
I'm sorry, I thought he was finished.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I'm done.
thought it was finished.
I'm done.
Okay.
Okay.
The village code doesn't say that. The village code says a reasonable rate of return, and it doesn't make any inquiry into these sort of.
Understood.
With due deference, Jack is grafting language onto the statute, which isn't there.
Esther?
I think I'd also like to understand what constitutes self-inflicted hardship.
But there is no standard. If you look at the state law, if you look at the village zoning code, you will see discussion of self-created hardship. That is absent. It's never been any inquiry before this board.
Okay.
None of it. So it's not an element. The question is if the drafters of the code had wanted to impose those sort of conditions on an application, they would have. What did they say? Is there a reasonable rate of return? And I can't get a bid on this house
Well,
for
I agree
10
with the
months?
broker.
That's no reasonable rate of
But I
return.
do agree with the broker, and full disclosure, I am a licensed real
No, I
estate
understand
broker.
that, yeah.
It may be overpriced.
It doesn't matter.
And I agree with you that it doesn't
listen,
matter,
it's
John.
listed at 19 million. The only bid was a $16 million bid, subject to a demolition permit.
Understood.
Okay, so I don't know. That's as conclusive a proof as possible. And I'm not saying, Zach, I'm not saying that that's what happens to old buildings. Quite the contrary. I'm saying that's what has happened to this building. I'm not trying to make a broad statement. Mr. Hogue is aware of the status of the building. I gave personal testimony. I'll take it off you. I gave personal testimony of my own awareness of the condition of this building since 1970. It was then, is now, in a horrific state of repair. The contractor that I worked for,
So your evaluation based on what Zach.
I'm still
Zach-
not sure that it's relevant, and I have been in the house, and it's in a terrible state of repair.
Okay.
And I have enough information.
Christine?
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's relevant either.
But it's a good point.
Thank
you.
It is a good
Overall.
point.
Thank you.
I think it's so self-evident.
Absolutely.
When we start talking about $18, $19 million homes and
Yeah.
hardship, it seems like an oxymoron.
No, I'm not referring to that at
It
all.
definitely seems a little,
Yeah,
and
I-
then when
yeah.
you make comments that, you have a $16 million offer, contingent on, obviously.
Irrelevant.
It becomes irrelevant. The question is,
Is that a hardship?
is it a hardship? The cost
the
that would be to
question.
either repair or replace. And
If it can be established through a comparison with an engineering assessment at the point of purchase, that was indeed
yeah, but what is
virtually
the condition now? That's my question. I mean, you understand you're looking at the transition and on how it became what it
If
is.
something deteriorates
But my question is,
significantly over time, then clearly there's been a diminution in value. I mean, you've lost value due to circumstances beyond your control. What I'm saying is, not enough time has elapsed here to possibly make that assertion unless an engineer has said, yes, we've tried to shore it up, the thing is sinking, we couldn't
Okay.
intervene.
Does the
None of
FEMA
that's been
laws
said.
make it less practical to salvage this building?
Excuse me?
Do the FEMA requirements make it less practical to salvage this structure?
I'll let you answer that question. That's self-evident. Of course they do.
Okay, thank you.
all right, the applicant is requesting that the board close the meeting. Doesn't necessarily mean it's granting an approval or a denial, just close and be able to have the opportunity to see, quite frankly, which was months, 2 months?
Goes back to February.
The application was first submitted. Most of the stuff you have there has been in there since November.
So,
Well, this is the first hardship.
I know, but it's
I
all
understood.
not-
Understood.
Very little.
But
of it has
everything
been-
is in the record.
Yes.
This
yes.
application has been renewed
So
for hardship.
before granting the applicant's request to close, so not necessarily close for written decision, is there any more from the public? You have to step forward, sir, because it has to be on the record.
Jeff Broadleib again. Perhaps as clarification, maybe I didn't make myself clear, but I would like to ask the board to consider an adjournment so that perhaps there could be more submissions. As I mentioned, there are individuals in town who are more interested in preservation than they are in demolition.
This board's not saying approval to
Right,
demo.
but so the clarification I seek, Mr. Chairman, is if it's closed, does the public have the opportunity to submit further?
No, once it's closed,
Right,
there's no
so then I'm asking that it be adjourned.
Can I respond, please? This is a person with no standing suggesting maybe some.
John, can you, John?
Everyone has a standing.
This is
second.
Everyone.
Yes, they do. Second of all, sir, part of the issue, part of some of the complaint is that when there are two people speaking at the same time,
I understand.
it
I
seems like it's a
apologize.
bully.
I understand. I apologize.
Allow the person to please speak, and if you could have a seat.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, because Mr. Bennett has used this argument one time before when I had spoken. This is a public hearing. And thank you for recognizing that. Now, there's a bit of a connection to this property. My wife's great-great-uncle owned 470 Gin Lane. It doesn't make it relevant to today, but the fact is that there's history in the community, and everybody in the community is welcome to this board and has their opinion. I appreciate the fact that you value it as such. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment? All right, board members, is there a motion on the table to close? If not, then we adjourn. Is there a
I'd like
motion
to
to close? Sorry?
Wait a minute. Can I respond to this? Hold on a second.
Adjournment?
These arguments may have been appropriate
I'm
during the
asking if there's a
certificate of
motion on the
appropriateness
floor
argument,
right
but
now,
as
so-
wait a minute. These arguments may have been appropriate during this.
Are you asking to close this?
Well,
for any
this is
further
the
public
recommendation
comment?
at this point, is it close, they approve the applicant's request to close, which gives the public, as well as those in the community, no further discussion, no further right to admit any further material for this application. The second option is to adjourn it, where at least we've heard it only for the first time as a hardship application.
As a hardship, I'd like to adjourn it.
Can I respond, please?
So is there a motion?
Can I please have discussion on it, please?
For a hardship?
Please.
Just a minute. Before we make the motion, why don't we give counsel
Okay.
a chance?
Well, we've given counsel.
Given him a
Excuse me?
Give him, he wants to make one more point, so let him
Okay.
make one more point.
All right.
Go ahead, John.
There is the suggestion that I've heard many times and most of the time never occurs, by somebody who lives 2 miles away, that there are other people that are concerned about preservation. I'm concerned about preservation too. That's not what's before you. If these comments were being made at the certificate of appropriateness standard, I would perhaps concede the point. But unless someone's going to come in here and offering you economic or engineering or evidence of that nature, then his point is totally ill-taken. And I would ask you to close this meeting. No one has come up and said that they have engineering information, economic information, anything of the sort. And you have everything you need. I am not asking you to make a decision tonight. I'm not asking you to make a rash decision. I'm leaving it in your hands, as is your right. But there has been no showing of any need to keep this application open for the public. You have more than adequate time to look at what is in the file and make a reasoned determination.
John, we get it.
did have a request, I think, from a Sally Smanberg that was emailed to us to also request an adjournment.
John,
For the record.
this is the first time the hardship application has come before this board.
First time.
So what?
So what?
Let me finish. A lot of information has been given over a period of time now that we're looking at it from a hard case standard that we should
different view.
review and look at and take into consideration.
Yes, and I'm not saying that you don't do that. What I'm saying is there has to be some showing of the necessity of keeping the public hearing open, and I'm not hearing any of that. Not as a whim. This is outrageous.
Understood.
Tone the voice down.
No, because I want logic in the decision making.
To adjourn the application.
Is there a second?
You can second it, Mr. Chair.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Nay.
All right, so.
Next
wait a minute,
application.
We don't have a quorum. Let me finish. We don't have a quorum, so therefore you're asking the application be closed. The issue here now is we have 2 for closed and 2 for adjourned. Where does that leave us, council?
You have a motion to close.
Yeah.
Is there a motion to close?
Have a motion to close?
Is there a motion to close?
I'm making a motion
You're making
to
a
close.
motion. Is there a second?
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
So you
3
to close.
Did you say aye or no?
You just said 3 to close.
3 to 1.
3 to 1.
Okay.
Motion.
3
Thank
to
you.
1.
Close.
Okay.
Thank you.
Motion's to close. Next application, Home Nature, 19 Pond Lane, for amendment of a prior ARB decision, addressing a second floor facade facing to the south.
Okay.
I'm not making it another 10 o'clock night.
You want to make it 11?
No. 10:30 next. Yeah.
You sure?
I can't do it.
Let's do this one.
Sorry.
It's the matter.
Here you go.
Okay, it's the same as what's in the file.
I'm not quite sure what happened with
And
the
this is
edit.
for you as well when you get a second.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, just to review what we did on the last application, that application came through as a hardship for the first time, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and by closing the meeting, can you explain to me, by closing the meeting versus the votes, so that the public is not misunderstanding what we just did? Because it can look a little bit difficult if you look at it from afar.
Well, it's closed at this point, but for informational purposes. The application is closed for all public discussion, as well as any additional documentation submissions to the application itself. So
On the hardship side.
On the hardship application. So therefore, at this point, it's this board's opportunity to review what's in file, and then we deliberate with our counsel, and then we empower him to come up with a written decision at the point in which we feel we have a consensus of the board.
And not by diluting our code, is that correct, Mr. Chair?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Bill Slight. I'm the architect for Home Nature at Pond Lane and Culver Streets. This is an application to amend the building that you approved, I believe it was last November. This application is made on the advice of the building inspector who, in looking over our building in the course of his inspections, noticed that the fenestration that we have on the east side of the building changed from what we had represented to you in our hearing.
From fixed to operational?
Yeah, I'll let me detail that a little
The size
further.
of the glass and everything stays the same, Bill?
What we had shown to you in the November drawing was an opening that was 12.5 feet wide.
The rendering of last.
I have
The approved?
I have here. I can show you this. This
So
is
what I'm looking for is the original approved application. Do we have that plan, that set of plans, set in file?
that should be in your file. Yes.
Sure, just
You have
give me a
that?
moment.
It shows the comparison between what is being.
Is that in the file? that I have?
Right, and I can describe this to you too as well. The original opening was 12.5 feet wide. We in the course of building the project, we changed that to 15 feet. Also, in the original application, we had shown two large panels and an operable door at the center. What we've changed this to is an operable door and 4 movable panels. The detailing otherwise is the same. It is an epay material. It is brown in color that will weather. They're above the glazed portion.
Picture of it.
This is what I had shown to you in November.
All right,
Yeah.
can you hand
Bill, but basically what you're doing is you're
Yeah,
going
no.
operational rather than fixed.
That's
You're
essentially
not changing the size other than.
Size did change.
No, but I just
Half
wanted,
feet.
I wanted to be clear that
Okay.
there was, you know.
Since they operate, they've had to get a little bit wider.
Right.
Okay. Any other changes?
Oh, you wanted
Yeah.
to.
Any other changes?
Besides this?
The second story of the building, when it was initially proposed, we had envisioned it as having a fiber cement type of cladding. We were, as we progressed with value engineering the building, we discovered that we couldn't find a domestic supplier who could provide the format that we wanted in that, and that other suppliers which were available from Europe were far too expensive to pursue that. As well, the client has a different feeling about the aesthetics of it. So what we changed the cladding on the second story to was the same cladding that was represented on the first story, and that is a horizontal white stained cedar.
Finishing.
Yeah.
All right.
Good.
Brian?
I have no objection.
Christine?
I have no objection.
Esther?
I think it's a nice replacement.
I'll say it very slowly. I have no objections either.
Excuse me, is it possible, could you just clarify?
Excuse me,
Are talking about a-
we'll get to the public comment just shortly. All right. I have no objection as well. Is there any public comment on the application? Please step
Tom.
forward, Tom.
My name is Tom Knight. It's good to be here with old friends on the Architecture Review Board. The question I have is, are we talking about the ground floor? Is this an opening on the ground floor or on the second floor?
Second floor.
It's on
No,
the
there's
second
a
floor.
ground floor opening increase as well, from 12 feet to 15.
No, that's the second floor
It's just
balcony.
all second story?
Second floor.
It's all second story.
Okay, so then I guess I have a question about why this opening. So this is for access to the outside space?
Yes.
To the second story deck.
And the ZBA has approved the second floor,
No.
but
No, it's an application pending, if I may.
Yeah.
Just shut up.
No. It's an existing application that was given approval for the outside side. This is just.
for the storage on the second floor.
Yes.
Right.
So why do you need, I'm asking the question.
John Foster wanted to make sure that if there were operational doors as opposed to fixed, that he had the approval of this board. It's a matter
Okay.
of amending for the approval of the code that comes in front of us for operation.
So it's strictly for code compliance then?
It overlooks Lake Agawam. So the intent is to limit the lighting, which my next question was going to be. The lighting is all downlit in this building, is that correct? Okay.
But the purpose of that opening is in case of emergency of some sort, or?
I think it's more recreational.
Recreational. They plan on entertaining outside.
The purpose for the application come before here, this board, is anytime there's any, and you are obviously aware.
So you have to go
changes
to the second floor through where all of the storage space is to go outside.
I don't have any issue with it. I think it's fine.
Nothing to do
Hmm?
with it.
I think it's fine. It's a seasonal use and so forth.
You're just looking at the architecture.
I'm looking at the architecture, Tom, not the...
Tom, so that we understand exactly what your argument or complaint is, you have an issue with the aesthetics?
My concern is that I think there's going to be a move to get, in fact, there already is, an application and process to get approval for retail operations on the second floor. And I would have a problem with that, but that's to be determined with the ZBA.
So do we understand one another, and you understand the responsibility, obviously, of our board? The internal use is irrelevant. We're looking at the architecture.
I understand that. I understand. I just, I hadn't seen the drawings. I didn't know exactly what this change
There's a little
was for.
flexibility of what people can do in the village, too, within reason, which is good.
Within reason. Those are the
Within reason.
critical
Yeah, of
comments,
course,
I
that's
think.
why-
Thank you very much.
Well, it's nice to see you again. Any other public comment? Please step forward.
Hi, my name is Ann Yanni, and I live next door, and I was at the meeting the night you guys approved the building, and it was approved with the idea that the second floor was going to be used strictly for storage. There was no approval for the outdoor use of that patio, which goes around the building. The initial plans had windows, not doors. All of a sudden, things have been changed to doors. Now they're before the ZBA, looking for approval to make that retail space. The building never had a second floor on it before, and I hope that you're
The
gonna,
neighbor right to the
I'm right
north?
to the, I am to the west,
West, I'm sorry, just behind the building.
just behind the
Right, no, I
building.
remember your testimony,
Yeah,
during
and
the
my
application.
husband, I don't know if you read his letter, there was a letter submitted to the board. I really feel that that's usage of that second floor is going to turn into, if the ZBA approves the usage as retail space, you're going to go out there, there's going to start to be serving coffee, parties, etc. This is a residential location. That is zoned residential. That's not zoned business. And I hope you will take our thoughts into effect on this, because it's definitely changing.
You made an
that whole-
argument that the application is pending the ZBA approval, correct?
Application is
That's an
pending the
argument
ZBA
for use
approval
that
for
you would have to
Thursday.
go to the ZBA to keep.
I've been to the ZBA, but I was also told to come here tonight and just to tell you guys to remember, you approved it as storage space. There was never any mention
This board
about
wouldn't
the
approve this.
outside.
What I'm trying to explain to you is that this board would never approve it for use.
We
You're
can't
saying,
approve it, Ann, for
hear me
use.
out, Ham.
Sorry.
We can't approve an application based on its use. This board's responsibility is design. How does it look?
Excuse me, but I think if you look back, because I read it, it was approved for storage. When you go back, look at the second floor,
I understand
because
what
they
you-
built the second floor, that's new. And it was also
The
supposed
applicant
to
may
be.
have, a part of his application, said it was storage. This board doesn't take in consideration use. Now, one thing this board will look at is the second-story deck and the amount of traffic that second-story deck would attract based on, and that would be a privacy issue. Maybe that's what you're mistaking in terms of the storage. Those are things that we would discuss, the privacy issue. The use of the actual second-story building, that's not a
That's
precedent.
ZBA, I understand that, I understand that.
So I just want to make sure you're.
Yep, no, I
you're-
understand, they will have to make the decision.
Correct.
But my concern is this outside deck. I mean, all of a sudden, it's going to be used for lots of things, and it was approved as a gray building. It wasn't approved as white. You know, things keep changing with not coming back to you for certain
And
things.
that's why the building inspector made sure they came back before this board, because there were some discrepancies in the original plan.
Okay, so I certainly hope you'll take my suggestions.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? Anything further from the board?
I have one question, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, I'll make it brief. The balcony that's in the front, if you will, or towards the park, I have no issues with. The one is there one that's facing Ann's house in the back? It could be of limited use? It's a question, though.
Question for me?
Yes.
The portion of the building on the second story is set back from Culver Street and set back from Pond Lane.
Regardless, is there a part of the balcony that overlooks Ann's home?
There's no part of the balcony
Thank you.
that
That's all I
overlooks
need.
Ann's home.
That's all I need. Thank you. I'm fine.
Anything further from the board?
Nope.
Zach, any issues? Historic District.
No, I mean, I think obviously the second story is consistent with the first floor, so it's nothing more to discuss
Can I take a look at
aesthetically.
the survey, please?
There's no opposition of the board, well, it's in file. which- If there's no opposition of the board, is there a motion to close for written decision by council? You've been here long enough, just for the record, so those that are watching understands the process. Any application in the historic district, upon approval, must be in writing. We empower our legal counsel to prepare a written decision at our next meeting, hopefully, or at the meeting after, depending on how busy he is. And that will be voted on at our next meeting. Any questions?
That's terrific. Thank you.
All right, anything further from the public? Motion to approve for written decision. I'm sorry, motion to adjourn for written decision.
I make a motion, we adjourn the application from Home Nature for a written decision.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next application, please.
Next application is Alexandra Scott.
Application is closed for written decision by council. Council?
Is this closed?
The application is closed for written decision?
The last case?
No.
For
Alexandra
Alexandra Scott. Do we have a written agreement? We did make.
I
Doesn't
didn't
say
think
it
it
on
was
mine.
written.
It's okay.
It says it on mine.
Doesn't
They
say
only
it on
call
this one.
See applicant present.
Do we have a written
70
decision?
Little Plains?
70 Little
No, I don't have the status.
We heard it at the last meeting.
I'm gonna pull it up right now.
Please do.
It was for additions to the north side of an existing house on Little Plains Road. Okay.
Just
And-
checking the minutes.
Just bear with me for a second. Alexander Scott to close for a written decision.
Yeah, I checked the
Okay.
agenda the other day, and I saw this one, and we didn't pull it up.
Okay. It's already adjourned, so we don't need a recall. 5 Gin Lane LLC, also closed for written decision.
Same thing.
All right.
Okay.
Closed. That concludes our historic applications for this evening. First application, non-historic. I'm sure you need to get another tape. All right, we're going to begin.
Mr. Chair, next application is Vitaly Seeley, 732 Hill Street for two-story structure, garage and pool house.
I have some plans for...
Your name for the record, please.
Sorry, Nicholas DeMarco. I'm the builder.
I'm sorry, you said your name was Nicholas what?
DeMarco.
Bill, you want this back? Sorry.
Thank you. I'm gonna put a stamp on one hand. Here's some stuff, I can stamp them too.
Just need to go into.
Okay.
Proceed.
Hello. Okay, just to go through the project briefly, if you look on the first page, the front elevation, we have a 4,079 square foot house here. It has white 16-inch cedar shingle shakes on the front. It's a center hall colonial design. The inside is a little bit different, but from the outside. We have 6/1 Colby Heritage Series all wood insulated windows. Everything on here is natural material. The roof would be a red cedar shingle. The shutters are clear cedar, painted a navy blue. And all the trim board would be a Claymark pine product with painted white, as well as the windows. So the only...
Built anywhere else in the village?
Not that I know of.
Okay, just similar stair tower. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's okay. Not that I know of. The rear elevation has a 2-story high dining area. Again, same specs on it. Has some French doors off of the back. No shutters on this side. The chimney is a white Lorraine brick, which I have a sample, but I assume you guys know what that looks like. And continue on the 2 side elevations. They're lower than the middle piece, which is at 33 feet high, and the side pieces are at 30. Yeah, no. Really.
Siding is cedar?
Yes, white cedar.
Brian?
Do you have an eave detail?
Well, you can see kind of on the side elevations, but not a
Your
close-up
rakes look
detail.
rather large there.
Say again? What was the comment?
The rakes at the end of your roof line just look really oversized. I was just wondering if there's a
What's
detail.
the dimension?
Yeah.
I think it's about 6 inches.
Your rakes?
Here.
Does the roofing overhang?
Yeah, a little bit. That's what I was. The eave is 6 inches over, about.
Some kind of
Yeah,
building.
something.
Something.
That's why I was looking for a detail.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't have any issues with it.
Esther?
I would like to see some more detail on your drawings, please, and I'd also like to see some samples of your materials.
Okay. You mean like the shingles or the? It's just the regular, the white 16-inch cedar shingles, and the red on the roof.
A1, the way that it's, the AutoCAD makes it very difficult to see the perspective of the roof lines.
Okay.
The
There's a.
AutoCAD program that you're using.
Okay.
It's that, yeah.
The detail.
Yeah.
I don't think there is any.
So you need a detail sheet showing fascia, soffit,
Right.
dimensional materials.
Okay.
Sample of the brick would be good, at least a photograph.
I have one with me if you want
Fine,
to.
bring it up then, but not yet. And then next time you come, when you print these out, if you can put them on a smaller scale that we can handle up here, it'd be great.
Okay,
But,
yeah, sorry about that, I
think
saw
what
it.
Brian, you're asking for is detail. And
Yeah,
then
I mean,
making sure that detail
If you look
fits
at your
in
front
with the-
elevation, your porch is
Mhm.
very well delineated. You can get a sense of, there's some moldings being applied under those eaves. There's a frieze board, and on your side elevations, there's nothing. And it
Okay.
just-
We were just going to use like more of a flat detail.
I think if you do your homework, as far as the house is very handsome, the layout, but we need to have details in the
Not
file.
flat.
Okay.
Any public comment on the application?
You want to look at the brick sample while you're here?
I have it, yeah.
Okay, good.
The white Lorraine. Listen, this is a little beat up, but it's just the white with the red.
Better beat
up. Yeah.
Better
And it
beat
will
up.
with the rain.
We like it
It'll
beat up.
wear it even more.
All right.
So you said, but
Okay,
Esther
so you
said
have
you want.
cedar roof, cedar siding,
Yeah.
right?
And
White
all-
cedar siding?
Yep, and
Red
white.
cedar roof, or?
Yep, and
okay.
pine trim.
Rick, I'm good. Do you need any other samples or just
fine with
dimensions?
yeah,
Just a
just
dimension
At
dimensions
this
and
sheet?
point,
details.
sir, the only thing we're looking at is a more descriptive viewpoint from AutoCAD or.
Do you want
a
the-
more defined rendering that shows?
Do you want some more trim and stuff on the eaves
Just a
and everything?
detail sheet. that
Okay.
focuses the rake, the fascia, the soffits, what dimensions they are.
Okay.
So they're keyed into the plan.
And
Addendum, actually.
the shutters, they're just paneled.
They're recessed paneled like on the drawing.
Okay.
Other than that, the structure looks
Is
great.
there a balcony on the second floor?
Yes.
There is recessed,
Recessed, okay.
partially recessed.
Off the master, yes.
It's really a
Okay.
step out, not really.
It's not a huge.
Garage and pool house looks great.
Okay.
Same thing, just a little detail sheet.
Okay.
What I would suggest you do is keep this file and then do an addendum, it's addendum detail. It's keyed into this plan if it's as easy, but,
At this time, you're asking the board to adjourn so you can prepare that information.
Okay.
And bring it at the next meeting, correct?
Next meeting? Okay.
Motion to approve the applicant's request to adjourn till the next meeting.
Thank you.
I make a motion to approve the applicant's request to adjourn for Vitali Chili, 732 Hill Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Sorry. Next application, please.
Next application is Emanon East Corporation, 30 Pelletreau, for an accessory garage.
I'm not seeing it in this rack, guys. Everything else but. We skip and come back to it? There's
Internet?
8 baskets on the floor.
No, these are all planning board.
Okay.
Not my J house.
So we're looking for 30 Pelletreau.
See it? Here, it's mixed in with this, sorry. There. Thank you for the affidavits. Is this for, yep, for that application? Did you call this?
Yeah.
Yes, it's been called.
Well, this goes with, this should go back in. This is.
For the record, name?
Michael White, 44 Pulaski Street, Southampton.
Did I?
Basically, what I'm asking for is to move the garage, which is 20 by 20, and I'm changing it to 14 by 20, and I'm moving it forward and 5 foot from the property line. And
No change in material, same size, you just relocating.
it's going to be the same materials as on the house. It's going to be cedar shakes with an asphalt roof, and I changed the roof.
Sorry.
I changed the roof to hip roof. There used to be a gable that was, it was going from front to back, and it was more, intrusive to the neighbor. I'm actually making the garage smaller. I took the porch off of the back cottage, and I have less coverage now. Yeah, lot coverage.
Issues?
I have no problem with
Issues?
None.
Public comment on the application?
Yeah.
Your name for the
First of all,
record.
he's not moving the garage because it's been demolished. Secondly,
Your name for
I'm sorry, Judy Mesos. I live next door, 40 Pelletreau. The beauty of the village has been that you have a sense of depth with your houses. This house had a garage that was set back, I think probably 20 or 30 feet from the house. Now he's trying to move it right to the house, so it's going to be from the street, essentially wall-to-wall building. And if you look at the parking plan, which 6 cars in the driveway, which is going to be, it's right on my property, to have to look at 6 cars, I would like to see a two-car garage, because in reality, a house that has as many bedrooms as this and an accessory building,
You want him to increase the garage, is that what you're saying?
I want it to be what it was, which was 2 cars. That was the original plan.
That's a first.
Was 2 cars, because with a 1-car garage, a car is never going to be in it. It's going to be holding the bikes, the beach stuff.
What use is irrelevant?
Yeah, well, to you.
Yes.
But it's not irrelevant to me,
otherwise
because
they're
I want a car in the garage rather than in the parking place. And when I was at the building department, he was saying that the parking spaces are too close to my property, that you're allowed to have the driveway can be 5 feet, but the cars have to park 10 feet or 8 feet, something like that. And that these are all, like, right up at the end, that all of this parking plan is absolutely
So
not.
what you're saying is the parking plan does not recognize what the code is.
Right.
Is that correct?
That, and I also am objecting to the garage being moved closer to the house because it's taking away, it's a third of an
visual
acre
depth
lot
of the
with
lot.
this huge house, huge pool, extra cottage, and then to pull the garage forward to make it, it's going to appear almost to be part of the house, and it's kind of just blocking, it's cutting the property in half, and it's wall-to-wall property anyway. So it just makes more sense that it stays back where it was, where the garage originally was in the original plan.
Can we ask the architect why?
Well, that's not it's the architect.
Well, I'll tell you what the builder told me.
Okay, we'll speak with the builder who's here.
Well, I was the one who set it up. She just drew it for me. Ironically, it's in line with her garage now, number one. Number two, her driveway is right on the property line. And she's asking me to do 10 feet, which is code. So I don't see why she would want me to do something that she's not doing. I mean, her cars, I should be the one worried about her cars parking on the property line. And not only that,
Excuse me, please.
I'm
Okay, go
lowering the lot coverage. And I put the pool actually from north to
What is
south.
the reason why you're pushing the garage forward?
Because it's in the backyard and it's where the pool is. It's basically hitting the pool, if you see on the survey.
So the garage is moving forward to make accommodations for the pool.
Right, because the pool is less of a burden to the neighbors running it north and south than it is when it was east and west, because it's coming closer to the property line. So the pool's actually going to be away from the houses.
Okay, so the pool's actually running the length of the property
Right.
rather than
Right.
being the
Right.
width of the property. What you're saying is that you'll be able to entertain more away from the neighbor,
Right.
as well as you need to push the garage forward to make accommodations for the current position.
Right, and also you'll see the old garage.
And you're reducing the size of the garage from a 2-bay to a single bay.
And, you know, it's not how many people are living in the house, it's just the code of how many bedrooms.
Okay, let me get the picture. Mr. Chair, the garage is here currently, and your idea is to move it up?
Yeah, I have a newer
I
plan.
know you
yeah.
do, but that's what you did, essentially.
Yes.
You did that.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So you took the garage that was situated back here, and your idea is to move it, correct me if I'm wrong, up here, right?
Yeah, well, the garage.
Up and to the right.
Correct.
Okay, so instead of the parking being where it is now, you're pushing all the parking right up against her property line, correct? Because of the where you have it delineated here.
Well, I have to be 10 feet away from the property line.
You have to be 10 feet.
Correct.
Okay.
Which I'm following.
Okay. So what's your issue? Excuse me.
I don't think it is 10 feet from the property line.
But is your issue the location of the garage?
The location of the garage. From the ascent, if you drive around the village, all of the garages, these are little lots, you know, and I'd like you to take a thing about privacy and all the caring for the historical, for the little people who live on third of an acre and quarter of an acre lots. All of the garages are set back behind the
And
house.
you're moving the garage forward so you can pop a pool in the backyard.
Yeah.
Is that
Right, and so
basically
you
it?
get back out of the
Okay.
driveway.
Your argument is pulling the driveway forward is pressing his parking against your property.
And and also aesthetically, the garage.
Aesthetically, then. Sorry.
I'm not allowed to talk about aesthetics.
I didn't say you weren't allowed to talk
The
about aesthetics. I just wanted to clarify
yeah,
what
the
you were saying.
aesthetics of the village
Yeah.
is, you know, all the garages are like set back a little bit, so you get a sense of space and distance.
I got it.
And that's not going to happen anymore. Now you're going to be on Pelletreau Street, and there's going to be the house, the garage, and it's going to take
Uniformity, right.
this whole. It's going to be like Queens.
Okay.
And I think the garage should be set back further, so you get a sense of distance and space between the house and the garage, like all the other.
There still exists separation between the garage and the
Not
house.
much.
Well, according to this survey, it's still set back about 6 or 8 feet from the back of the house, and it
From the
doesn't
back left,
show.
there's a porch thing that he's got on it.
Okay.
Okay, I have a I have two surveys here with a lot of drawings on them. I need a clean survey
This is it.
It's got to go that way.
And I need to really understand what's happening here because it's very confusing.
Why the handwritten alternative in terms of the driveway?
What does that say? I think Tin wrote that.
It's the same one that we.
Tin wrote that.
Yeah, I think he wrote that regardless, it has to be
Basically
10 foot.
moving this up. Hold on. I have to say, I agree completely with my fellow board member. This Suffolk County map that you have, the Suffolk County sanitary, can I have this just a second? This sanitary, just 1 minute, okay? This just shows what the plan is. I need to see the existing survey that's stamped and with a fresh date on it and the proposed. Because the one that you just handed me, the survey that you just handed me completely shows the pool in another place than where it's going to be. So just clean up your application. I want to look at this site. I want to go down and look. I know Palo Trovo
And I think it's interesting.
Excuse me. I know Palo Trovo very well, but I want to just take a look at the site. What I'd like to see, as you're saying, the survey's just keyed in a little bit.
First off, you
Right,
can't
but I also
move
think
it.
it's very
Guys,
interesting.
guys, we got a lot of arguing back and forth, ma'am. We'll call you for additional public comment if you need.
First off, the pool's in. It can't go back any further.
I would like to see an existing survey, what's there and what's proposed.
This is it. And I have the one that drew it. Lucy's here right now. She could testify that this is the correct drawing.
This one.
The one that I just handed you is the correct drawing. You're looking at the health department survey, which isn't
Which shows the original location of the garage, correct?
correct.
Which
And this
was
also
moved.
does too.
Which was taken down to be moved, right?
Correct.
Okay, and it was moved forward about 10 or 15 feet, so to speak.
No, 29 feet.
Okay, sorry, 29 feet.
No, actually, no. It was moved forward 22 feet. You know, the problem
Can
is.
you do
is
me a
that-
favor? Can you get a survey that shows the,
Do you have any
you do
issues
have
with
it.
the survey?
Hold it. Mr. Chair?
I thought it was pretty
I'm
clear.
talking, I thought it was pretty clear too, correct?
Mr. Chair, they do, I'm sorry, I'm seeing the new survey that he handed in. There's a dotted line indicating where the garage used to be back here.
That's
So
correct.
it's been removed. The
It's
pool is
been
in.
removed, the
That-
pool is in, and then this is slid forward. The problem is the old survey that we have,
Completely different.
completely different.
That's not what I submitted.
In that there's it's fine, I'm just saying, nevertheless, it's in the file, and it's a pencil-written pool that's located opposite of where your pool is now.
So you
Look at that.
satisfied, well, we're gonna see that. Are you satisfied with the information that has been given?
I'm satisfied with the information that's been given. I think that there's 6 or 7 feet, where it still sits back a little bit. I know what you're saying as far as moving things forward, it begins to mess up the fabric and the in and out of the street.
Go take a look at this house and see.
I will.
And I also think it's very interesting that it's Saturday morning at 8 o'clock you put the cement in the pool because you knew he was coming here.
All right, well, I'm not going to address that.
That's why
But
I did
I
it.
want
I
to just
have
take a
nothing
look.
better to
What I'm
do on
asking,
Saturday.
can I ask you to do me a favor, please? Or do me, not a favor, but to update a survey that's got a stamp on it by a surveyor instead of just a copy? What's the date on that?
This was drawn. This was just.
There's no stamp on the survey.
Well, she'll testify that she's.
Do you have a survey? This is a site plan. Do you have a legal survey? She's not a surveyor, she's an
So why,
architect.
she really does
Well,
that?
so she can't draw a site
I'm
plan
not
stamp
going to
it?
debate the law here. You've been in front of this board many times, you'll probably be in front of this board again. What I'm asking you for is a survey that specifically is stamped New York State Surveyor license that shows where the proposed, what's going on here. I have a Suffolk County tax map from application on the building permit. I see a handwritten swimming pool that's completely 180 degrees located away from this. The neighbor is stating that she wants to she doesn't want the buildings to align, if you will. I'm satisfied pretty much so that the building is set still further back, but move forward in such a way that.
Board
can
members,
move
let me
forward
just
before
remind
we
us
go
that we have in past accepted site plans in lieu of surveys. It's not something that's foreign to this board. Secondly, we've also given, since this is just formality in terms of a more accurate and more clean, whether it be a survey or a site plan, we've always contingent upon an approval with that as part of the file within a week or so. This is not, if the board is happy with the aesthetics, the placement of the garage, we do have a site plan which is being, has been added to the file as part of the record. We have the discretion of improving the application pending additional information from the applicant if necessary, or accepting the site plan as proposed. Do you have an issue going forward with the application? And approving it?
I'd like to make a site visit.
Ironically, that's her garage that's going to be in line, but hers is okay, but mine's not.
Because it's set back from my
You
house.
can't have the dialogue. I will give you the opportunity to speak.
It's actually the same. And, you know, her driveway's on the property line. So I have to go to a higher
This is
standard.
a photo, 1 second. Take it easy. This is a photograph of your neighbors, of this neighbor's
Right.
house in relation to the garage that's further back, is that correct?
Hers is about, mine will be about 4 foot forward of that.
Of that one?
Of that one. And her driveway is on the property line.
Can you indicate that on a survey, please?
Yeah, I mean, if
Or
you-
even on a site plan that can be linked into a survey as a legal
Why do I have to
device?
spend $1,000 to go look at the obvious? I mean, really. I mean, I'm not, with all due respect, I mean, this is, they entertain every nut that comes here. She throws stuff in my backyard.
Wait.
I
Mr.
mean,
White.
This is not the
Mr. White.
forum for that.
Mr. White,
This is not
seriously.
the forum for that.
Seriously, you've been before this board many times. You will be again, as Ham has mentioned earlier. We're not going to insult people who come before before this board.
You
We're
have
not
two
gonna-
members that
We're
are
not going
willing
to
to go
insult
there.
people who
Yes.
come and speak on behalf of their right, which is the neighbor has a right to have an opinion. So we're not going to do that. We're not
I
going to be
understand that,
we're
but
not going to be
She's
disrespectful.
written emails that asked me for $50,000, and it's in the record, because I took down a couple trees in my yard,
I'm not-
okay? She asked me for $50,000.
Okay, whoa. I'm just concerned with
tired of it.
I'm concerned with the application. I want to look at the site, okay? And,
I understand.
That's all.
So you-
Okay, If
so
the chair
what
is saying that a
about
site plan is
Site
adequate,
plan
just give me a
has
blown-up
been in the
version,
past
show where your building
adequate.
is.
I would ask that you superimpose it into a more acceptable site plan, which we can add to the file.
From a surveyor?
Well, if your architect is
Can your
willing to do
architect
it.
seal it?
Sure.
Seal it.
Your architect can
If your
seal it.
architect can seal it, I've known Lucy Lou for years, she's very good at what she does, I'm sure she'll
Okay.
be able to provide that with
All
on a
right.
clear sheet, okay, with an dated date.
Okay.
Not quite clear. The site plan that I prepared is not good enough?
No, just
not
blow
standard
it,
sealed.
blow it
Just
up,
blow it
please,
up.
so it's in a larger format with a specific distance between the house and the newly located garage, or the new garage where it's going to be built.
What we would like is existing in comparison to.
The
Hear me out,
plan
ma'am.
I submitted is a large one. I put it in. Not the one that he's giving you, the little one. I have a big one.
Ma'am, it's not a part of this file.
I was there when she gave it to me.
I don't know what to say. So,
Could you give us another
can you
one,
prepare
please?
that for our next meeting?
Can you prepare a larger sheet for the next meeting, please? In the meantime, two of the members are going to go and take a look at the site to confirm, so that this can be
There's no
clearly
issue,
decided.
and there seems to be no opposition of the board. Just clean the file.
I think we just
Okay.
need to do some double checking.
Is there any additional public comment?
Hi, my name is Connie Cornish. I'm the neighbor across the street. My concern is with the number of new homes that have been built on our street, which is significant, that he's got 7 bedrooms on his property, 2 C of Os, and very little parking. And recently, with the other homes that have been built, everyone's in the street. It's very difficult. That street's a big cutover to David White's from Elm and the train station, and it's almost impossible as someone who lives on the street to back your car out of your drive, given the amount of cars double parked on the street. Because now,
You're talking about construction.
no, I'm talking about homes with so many bedrooms that on the weekends especially, you have.
Connie, this
not the
isn't
purview.
this is just
Not-
this is a board that looks.
But there
at
aren't enough parking spaces in his drive to accommodate the number of bedrooms.
This board does not review parking.
So you can build any number of bedrooms, and it's got
No,
nothing
what
to
you're
do with the
asking-
drive or the
hear me out,
garage? No,
Ham,
I'm just
Ham.
confused. I'm
Ham,
sorry.
let me
I thought
finish.
the
Let me-
building
let me
department told me to come and talk specifically about that.
No one should have told you to come here and speak to this board about parking.
Not our gig.
So the pre-existing garage, that it's gone, is irrelevant?
What they're doing is they're taking a garage, they're taking it down, or they
Yeah.
took it down.
Yep.
They're building it forward more closer
No,
to the
I get what
street.
they're doing. I just wonder where the cars are supposed to go.
Is your question, because they have taken down the garage,
Yes.
which was further back,
And made the drive shorter.
making the drive shorter,
Forcing
there is...
cars out to the street.
Yes.
That's your
all you have to
question.
say.
Thank you.
I apologize for miswording it. My
Thank you.
apologies.
And your neighbor has said that she's concerned about the site placement of the proposed garage.
And she's a different human being, and I'm a different, I just have an issue
However,
with,
she has a good point, that the site placement of a garage will end up perhaps doing the same thing. I just want to view the site.
Which is why we'd like to go take a look at the site.
Exactly.
Great.
Okay. Do you have any issues on the rest of?
So that we understand, because a lot was just said, and I want to make sure for the record, we acknowledge that placement of parking is not the purview of this board. If the relocation of this garage, for some reason, adds more parking to the street, is not the purview of this board to discuss or even.
so the buildings department misguided me. They told me that part of this process was to have enough spaces in the drive, in contrast to the number of bedrooms that were approved to be built, and you
Not
approve.
Not correct.
That would not
Okay,
be
so
correct.
that was
Connie, there's
incorrect,
one
then they
point I
told
would
me
make.
that.
When there's a choice of putting garage doors facing the street or facing public right of way, and there's screening, this board has always encouraged.
I was just misinformed.
This board has always encouraged parking to be removed from the front of a structure and be placed behind. When we're beyond our challenges, we back away from that point. Do you understand?
Yeah, I
Okay, thank you.
guess we're just pushing a lot of cars out on the street on Peloton.
We're not.
Okay.
No, but it's,
Well-
it was my understanding from the building department that if there's 7 bedrooms, there have to be 6 parking
don't
places
know.
on the driveway.
I don't know.
Ma'am,
And that's not,
But
Not our
ma'am,
gig.
okay, I just want to put it into.
where do we go to discuss
You got to hear
that?
me out, please. I want to put it into this. This board, a lot of times, gets put into position to start stopping people from doing things that with out of our jurisdiction. We do not have jurisdiction about parking.
So who does?
You would have to go to the building department if you have a question about parking and you feel that there is not enough parking per the lot. I don't know who you spoke with, and I'm not going to assume, nor am I going to make that an issue. You have to go to a department that's an enforcement department, which is the building department. It is not this board. We're aesthetics. Our job is, does it look compatible to the community? Color, material, design, privacy, landscape, that's what we are. Okay?
And we're tired. The last public meeting we had was 5 hours long.
Well,
We
it's
started the
irrelevant
meeting
about
at
it.
6,
So
and I wanna move
you have
along.
some other,
No, I just want to state for the record, there's only 5 bedrooms, and.
We don't care.
No, I know, but
We
it's
don't
just.
care.
And
you
a
know, I
cottage
know.
with
Here.
2 others.
Okay.
Can we make a motion, please?
nope. So you're asking the board to adjourn so that you can get your information, correct?
And so that,
All
and so
right.
that
So,
we can go
motion
down
to
and look
approve
at
the applicant's request to adjourn.
I make a motion to approve applicant's request to adjourn 30 Pelletreau Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next application, please.
Wickapock Realty 1 LLC, 108 Halsey Street, for a 2-story single-family dwelling, detached garage, and accessory pool house.
I'll stay for the vote.
Are you guys both representing the same structure?
Yes, we are.
Good, okay. Affidavit of posting and affidavit of mailing.
Good evening, my name is Bill Slight. I'm the architect for the applicant. What we have is a new building at this location, replacing an existing structure. The building will be a 2.5-story traditionally styled home. It has a wraparound porch at the front. It has the roof arrangement is east to west, as is the lot. It is a gabled roof. along the north and the south sides of this roof, the line of the roof is interrupted to provide interest with some small dormers or in one case a curved fascia line. The rear of the building has a one-story portion of the building that extends to the east. And in the southeast corner of that portion of the building, there is a small deck off of the off of the east side of the living room.
Survey?
I've seen it. So what we have is a narrow, long, linear lot.
That's correct.
That you've spread the entire, pretty much the massing at the rear of the property, correct?
I'd like to
That's
visit the
correct.
site on this, Mr. Chair.
The house has been built within the
Pyramid?
skyline pyramid,
Okay.
and in fact, the ridge of the roof is less than the allowed height of the village.
Are
So
there
what are the-
photos of the neighborhood?
What's that?
Are there photos of the?
That's what I'd like to see.
Yeah.
I'd like to.
I
go
have
on it.
I have some photos here of some other structures in the neighborhood. I can give you a description of the character of the neighborhood. This is Halsey Street.
Why don't you add the photos into file?
Certainly.
For completion.
Yeah.
Bill, what's the roof material?
Material will be a cedar roof.
Right, and the stucco?
The stucco.
On the gable end?
You mean in the little craftsman peak there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that may be stucco. It may simply be painted panels, but it's meant to
And the
give a little
siding?
craftsman detail. The small windows, the little small attic windows, will be recessed from the facade, and there'll be a curved portion of the roof that it wraps into those windows. A similar treatment happens at the gable at the rear of the house.
Right.
What's this chimney detail that I'm seeing? Horizontal band with long spires?
Oh, okay, so it's a corbelling at the top of the chimney, and then that's articulated with a vertical element on each face of the chimney.
And that'll be brick as
It projects
well?
about 2 inches, maybe 1.5 inches, and it's stepped back by one or two bricks at the termination of that
It's a
detail.
lace then?
Pardon?
It's a step.
Yeah, and it's meant to relieve the mass, the monotony of simply the sheer face of the
But it's in
chimney
brick
mass.
as well?
So it's in brick.
Yeah.
Yes,
And
sir.
what's the type of brick that you're using?
It'll be a
Clay? Red?
It'll be a red clay, brick that meant to look, an older look to it.
Looks handsome.
Zach, not that it's in the historic district, but it's one of those
Yeah, I was.
communities of interest.
I was about to describe the neighborhood to you. As you know, I've always been very interested in the historic makeup of the types of houses that are in the village. This is an interesting street because it has so many different styles of homes on it. There are homes that there's an American Foursquare. There's gabled homes like this with porches. There are gambrel-style homes. There are some newer homes that have been built, and you see some examples of those in the photos that I've sent to you that have paired front gables on a linear roof that runs parallel to the street. There's also a number of bungalow-style homes, small one-story homes. There's also homes that are ranch-style homes.
I'm familiar with it. The house that they delineates here that's going to be removed, can you talk about what that structure?
The house that's being removed is a bungalow-style home. It has a
Do you have any
porch.
photographs of that?
I don't.
Is the application inclusive of taking
But
the
that-
house
that-
down?
Is that part of the application?
Is that part of this application, Bill?
No.
Okay. Is the house up still?
I believe it is, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're replacing, on this lot, you're taking a house down, you're
I'm sorry.
replacing this
We-
house with it. I think I'd like to look at the site.
We have a photograph.
Yeah, sure. I'd like to visit the site, just to get my bearings.
Curtis,
I'm still waiting on
Thank you.
to answer your question.
Yeah.
I understand.
So this, I'm sorry, just for the record, this is the bungalow-style house.
That's the house
on the
that's
property.
on the property.
That would be coming down, and,
To answer your question, Curtis, my only comment would be, without having studied this further, is that I think that a lot of different architectural styles are represented here, and it may be a hybrid of a variety of things. And my first look at this is that I need to kind of take it all in.
Mm-hmm.
I see about 3 or 4 different architectural styles and a lot of different roof forms going on. And that may make a lot of sense after I've had a chance to study it, but first glance, it seems like a lot going on.
I'd like to go to the site, just get myself familiar with the neighborhood.
Yeah. I mean, we have the individual
Is there any way-
houses, but we don't have a streetscape. So
Right. Could you provide a streetscape, Bill,
Is
for the
there any
record?
way you can do a color three-dimensional rendering? There's a lot. There's a lot.
That's for this project. I don't think that's necessary.
I'm asking for you to do that.
Can you colorize it?
I'm not going to do it.
Right.
Okay. And it may or may not make the application longer or shorter.
All right.
He's stubborn.
Okay.
He's always been stubborn.
All right, well.
You're leading
We're
all
waiting
of
on
his-
their approval.
Yeah, I know. He's,
I mean,
no, you're
the
still
chair
leading-
asked.
No,
Frankly,
frankly, what's
The chair
required,
asked
what's
you for
required for
something-
submission is plans and elevations.
Okay.
All right?
No problem.
And this board has had long experience, all of you are familiar with plans and
Build
elevations.
us up, Bill.
And it's not as if this is, there's very much happening as far as the relief
I asked
of
for
this
something, you
building.
said you wouldn't give it, and fine.
I do not feel it's necessary for you to understand what is happening on this application.
Okay.
Are you asking?
Are you asking this board to adjourn for your follow-up?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
what do you,
Motion to approve the applicant's request to adjourn.
Can I suggest to you that maybe you,
I'm sorry, is there public comment? Yes, please. Please step forward before I.
he's got an issue.
Well, that's kind of a problem.
Hello again. My name is Jeff Broadleib, and I am on 166 Halsey Street. And the concern that I have, along with 18 members of the community on Halsey Street, whose letter I have here and signatures, are concerned about the mass of the height. With your indulgence, can I read the letter I sent this morning? It's very brief. We, the undersigned residents of Halsey Street, request that the Architectural Review Board reject the plan as submitted regarding the construction of a new house at 105 Halsey and ask the applicant to resubmit a plan with a roof height not to exceed 28 feet above street level. Additionally, we ask that the setback match the houses on the adjacent lots. We object to the current plan in which the height at the peak is 34 feet, and we surmise could be higher if the grade is elevated. And we do so on the following grounds. The proposed height is significantly greater than the surrounding houses, and I have a streetscape to show you, amateurish as it may be. Its construction would be detrimental to and deteriorate the streetscape. The 4 houses immediately to the north and the 4 houses immediately to the south on the same side of the street, which is the east side, are 1- and 2-story bungalows, capes, and Dutch colonial homes, none of which exceed 28 feet, my estimation, and the owners of the houses. Second bullet, the 5 houses immediately across the street on the west side of the street are of similar size and height to those on the east side of the street. And I have, if you could indulge me 1 second, I will share with you the houses. Okay. Can you I'll give this to you, or do you want me to spread it out?
Goes that way.
I'm sorry?
That way.
Okay. They all spread out like that.
You don't need a streetscape now.
These are the houses.
You don't have a color rendering in there, do you?
And they all taken from my 5'6" vantage point.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have a color rendering that you can do?
Anyway.
I don't want that. I know the neighborhood very well. It's
Okay.
really cool, though.
But if you can see, there's no house that exceeds 2 stories with a gable. And most of the other houses are 1-story bungalows. The proposed height and structure would be towering over the neighbors, and I do have the signature of one of the neighbors who's concerned about privacy.
Question I have, how far back, do you realize how far back this house is on his lot?
The current one is, I think, all the houses there are roughly, and I'm stepping it out, like maybe 30, 40 feet, but they're all consistent. I mean, if you go down the street and step
just
out.
a question.
Okay.
Thanks.
Let's see. So again, this is a concern about privacy to the immediate neighbors. The proposed height will reduce sunlight and sky view of the adjacent neighbors and those across the street, who again have signed the petition as well. Should the applicant elevate the grade, which I'm not sure if that's the case, then there's the concern of runoff as well. So we ask that this letter and the names on this signature, of which there are 18, be submitted and read into the record. I will do so now. Okay.
Can you hold that up reasonably so the camera can see what the streetscape looks like? Because it's a great example.
Understand something, we're not reading all of those letters into the record.
No. It was just one letter with a bunch of signatures.
Thank you very much.
No.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
So did you want me to hold this up?
Sure, why
We
not?
want to hold it up to the camera. We also want it's
Phil, can you hold the other end of that? That'd be terrific.
Be happy.
Yeah, there you go. Since you're
Phil,
taking that over a little bit, you know?
This is a team effort. I'm asking you to reduce your house, but maybe we'll make it work, because it's happening.
Yeah, there you go. There's
There you go. Okay?
Okay.
There's a street.
It's getting all teary now.
There we go. Okay, over.
Panorama.
And I do have the streetscape on the other side. It's very
Would
similar.
it help if we spun this around for you to see?
No, this is good. This is getting emotional. This is great.
Do you want the opposite side of the street?
No, we're fine.
This is fine.
Okay.
I'll be down on the site.
Okay,
At some
great.
point.
Well,
You can
But you can put it into the record if you don't
Okay.
mind stamping it in. Let's fold it right now. Let's put
Okay,
it in the
so
file
here's
so it's in
the,
there.
across the street as well. Okay.
Any additional public comment?
Okay. Thank you, folks.
Is this the whole streetscape?
This is
That's gotta be stamped
that way,
This
the
is the
internet.
east side.
And this
that's
is,
the west side.
can you just indicate what in there?
And the addresses are on the back of each.
On back of each photograph. Very
Right.
good. Thank you.
I think that streetscape's disingenuous because the next house to the right is 34 feet high. And then the house after
I
that.
suggest you do your own streetscape. Fair enough?
No,
Okay.
I did give you a picture of it.
That's
And-
great. It's 10:30 at night.
Let's just,
I wanna
because
wrap this up.
the back and forth only prolongs it.
No,
Please.
I understand it. But, he's making accusations, and as you know.
Nobody's made accusations.
Before this board, you've had 3 or 4 houses on Halsey that have been 34, 35 feet very recently.
Then show us a streetscape proving that. Fair enough?
They
I'm gonna
did?
go to the site.
Mike, we're going to go to that.
Mike, we're gonna go down there,
Do a site
all right?
visit.
Okay.
We're not making any decisions tonight. We're gonna go down.
A-
We'll
any-
take a look at your streetscape. If you have a rebuttal, let's look at it, okay?
Any additional public comment?
Yeah, may I just make a clarification? The proposed house is, the required front yard setback is 40 feet. The closest point to the road and the house is set parallel to the property lines, whereas the front street is on an angle. But at the closest point, it's 44 feet, so it's...
You're
it's
11 and a half feet on your side yard setback.
Yeah, so,
Right.
yeah, we comply in all regards to the zoning and the setback requirements that are in the code for height, for side, for setbacks, for lot coverage. There's no variances in any way required or requested
In
for this
past times, I
property.
would have said that would have been irrelevant because you would have been here. The fact that you're here that means that you comply, but to hear it now for the record, it's,
Thanks.
we've had some situations in the past.
Okay.
All right, no further public discussion. You're asking this application to be adjourned for adjourned till the next meeting while you prepare your information, correct?
I think it's for you to take a look at the site.
You're asking this requesting this board to adjourn the application so that you can prepare and we have the opportunity to do a site visit. Motion to approve applicant's request to adjourn.
I make a motion to approve applicant's request to adjourn. What's the address?
And requesting a street
108
sweep.
Halsey.
108 Halsey Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Next application, please.
Evan and Julia Scheuer, 140 Meeting
I'm sorry,
House
was there a
Lane.
question?
I wasn't sure that Bill understood that you requested a streetscape.
No, he understands.
Okay.
A rebuttal.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, if we think it's appropriate.
If you think it's appropriate. I'm sorry. Thank you, Bill. I'm sorry, I interrupted. Please.
Evan and Julia Scheuer, 140 Meeting House Lane. Is the applicant present?
Motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn Evan and Julia Scheuer, 140 Meeting
Second.
House Lane.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next application, please.
Farrell Building Company, 80 Downs Path, for a two-story single-family dwelling with attached garage and pool house.
Good evening. My name is Terrence McKean. I'm representing Will Manier Architect. I have a handout for you.
Is this what's in the file?
I'm not 100% sure.
What are we looking at then?
This is rendering, presentation plans, pool house.
Okay,
So
are there
what are we
any
looking at?
Are there any changes from what you're proposing to us now, from what's in our
From
file?
the record set?
No.
That's
So
what-
these match the record set in terms of scale and layout?
Correct.
And you're a licensed architect in
I
the
am
state
not.
of New York?
I am not.
Okay. So how are you certifying this?
I represent the architect.
Okay. So you work for his office?
Correct.
And what's the architect's name for the record, please?
Will Manier.
Will Manier. Okay.
Okay.
Can I have the file, please?
Sure.
Well, the lot is 61,475 square feet. The allowable lot coverage is 10,107 square feet. We are proposing a total of 8,320 square feet. The max gross floor area allowable is 8,870 square feet, and we are proposing a 7,945 square foot total
Do you have
gross
an
area.
affidavit of mailing or posting? Do we have that in the file?
You have the file.
Can you look for that first, please?
The house itself is a shingle-style home, red cedar shakes on the roof.
Can I interrupt you for a moment? Is there an existing house on this property?
There is.
Good question. The mail list. 1 second, please. This property borders the Village of Southampton property?
That's correct. There is
Okay.
actually,
I don't see sorry, with just moving forward, I don't see an affidavit of posting or an affidavit of mailing, or at least an affidavit of posting.
Nor do I.
Did you include that part as part of the file?
Do you think?
The affidavit of posting and mailing.
it should be in there.
I see a mailing list, Mr. Chair, but I don't see any mailing. What's the house that's on there now? Do you have a demolition permit?
I actually, I do not know.
Perhaps is that a
This is the
second
existing house.
application? This application says for a new single-family dwelling, for a new building, and it says separate demo permit, demo house, and pond gazebo, handwritten in here.
You know that the demo permit doesn't have to come to this board.
Right.
Did you find a posting and mailing?
I did not find a posting and mailing, and
We checked the file because we You don't have that, we don't have standing.
I do have, yeah, I don't think we have standing. However,
Page.
I have a survey here, it says proposed, nothing.
Nope.
Nothing. Do you have a survey that shows the existing location of the existing house on the property? Demolition, isn't there? Anyway, the posting is a pretty big issue.
The fact that we don't have posting, we don't have mailing, we have no standing to review the application. I would suggest that you go back to whoever submitted the information.
Okay.
Make sure it's part of the file.
And, Mr. Chair, I would like to see on this, if I may, some reference to the file set of plans on these drawings. Maybe if you could show, for instance, on this page, what the ridge line is in relationship to the grade.
Sure.
Okay. And
is that in the main?
I do have that information. I have.
That's in the main set?
If it's part of the main set.
Correct.
If you can just key this into the main set. Do you understand what I'm saying? So we
Sure, on the presentation type
on the
stuff?
presentation, that's
Sure.
keyed in and that becomes a document, right?
Are there details?
I don't see any.
No, on the main set.
No, I believe this is just the, yes, there is, I'm sorry.
Well,
do you have a?
I don't want to go far. I mean, we're giving requests and we're giving requirements of the application.
We don't have an
That we
application?
don't have an application,
Right.
so let's not go too far
you want
in giving instruction.
So we
I just want to make
adjourn
sure we can't even adjourn. We don't have standing
So it
for the
doesn't
application.
It doesn't exist.
So it doesn't exist. This didn't
I'm
happen.
I'm not trying to be
No, I
difficult.
understand.
It's just that we don't have your information in file, and therefore, for litigation purposes.
So you don't have the certified mailing?
You don't have the certified
Or
mailing.
you have an affidavit of posting, so if this was going up next to you or, you know, next to any of us, we'd want to make sure that this is an application that.
We just need you to find that information in our next meeting, make sure it's part of the file.
Okay, is there, any comments on the overall?
We can't even comment on it.
Comment.
Sorry.
Okay.
No, I learned a lot here today.
Okay, do you want to postpone this, Mr. Chair, or do you
No
want to?
postponement, there's no
exist.
application.
All right, so.
You're
I
not
don't know
here.
how clear I can be about this, it doesn't have standing, so
Okay, because of the lack of a file, a complete file.
we already said that several times.
Next application.
I'm sorry, sir.
Thank you very
Good
much.
night. Next
Next application,
application is
please.
Vincent Primiano, 57 Moses Lane, for a two-story, single-family dwelling, enlarge existing detached garage, and convert partial into pool house.
Hi, my name is Yu Liu. I'm the architect. I represent Vincent Primiano on his house on Moses and Harvest, corner of Moses and Harvest Lane. These are the 3D drawings that I just prepared. And these are the smaller plans that might help to look.
The smaller plans that you're providing us, they are exactly what is already in our file, just smaller rendition, same
smaller,
dimensions, same
the-
style, same design, everything's duplicate.
Page 3, I made a mistake.
They
These are
taught you
the-
this at Syracuse, didn't they?
Page 3, I made a mistake. This is the revision. Otherwise, it's exactly identical.
Page 3 of the final set, right?
But page 3 should be replacing the page 3 in the file.
Let's see if we have an affidavit of mailing.
Otherwise, the smaller plan and the big plan should be the same, identical.
And you have 2 copies of this?
2 copies of the...
You do?
Yes,
Okay.
should be.
Can you stamp both those? I think you just got the face one. Affidavit of mailing, affidavit of posting,
Yeah, it's in there.
here. Okay, thank you. What is the difference on page 3?
The roof deck, I drew it wrong on the original filing.
What is the difference?
The roof deck right now is corresponding with the elevation. The old one didn't correspond with the
What
elevation.
was the difference in the court?
What's the change?
The size
Is it bigger
is a
or
little
smaller?
longer.
Bigger or smaller?
A little bit bigger, yes.
This one is bigger?
Yes.
And by how much?
1 foot by,
1
1
foot.
foot by 5 foot. Let me see. Yeah, 1 foot by 5 foot, bigger.
1 by 5.
That's the only differences. Because I noticed it's
So the
doesn't-
projection out is 1 foot, or the projection out is
the
5 feet?
projection is 1 foot. The length is 5 foot.
Oh, very good, okay. And that's inset, is that the roof deck that
Yeah.
sets into the roof?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's 4 feet 7 inches?
Yes.
But it sets into
It
the-
was.
That's kind of cool.
It was.
It was 4.7?
It was 4.7 to the outside, and then actually I should do it inside. 4.7. That's why it got bigger.
I didn't go all the way.
Don't worry about it.
So the 3Ds, some of them are from SketchUp, some of them are rendered. So
Yeah.
just for the kind of looking, I guess.
Brian, comments?
Just, again, the contextualness of the neighborhood.
Oh, the neighborhood picture should be in there. I have an extra.
We have.
There should be a set in there. I filed it. And then this is the extra.
Okay.
And I actually have the plan of the neighbor, 45 Moses. That's, I got it from the building department. You can,
Is that adjacent to
yes,
this?
the
Right
big
next to
one
it?
that just built.
Yeah, we have another copy here.
I have the,
Oh, sorry.
that one you can refresh your memory. That's like directly to the south of the house that I'm building right now. Actually, I have a satellite view. The satellite view, the neighbor's house is wrong because
Thank you.
it's an old satellite view. I highlighted my property, and then to the south of it is 45 Moses. Right now, the satellite is not accurate.
Okay.
That's what's approved for 45 Moses.
All right, I see that.
So what you're showing us by the other property is that size. You're saying that we've granted a larger size home on Moses, and therefore.
No, I'm not trying to
Okay.
do anything.
There's a reason why you
sneaky.
showed us.
He's asking me for neighbors, so I took it out. If he didn't ask, I wouldn't take it out.
That's a good question.
So I have a question. Is this the house that's on the property right now?
Yes.
Okay. This is the survey, correct?
That's existing.
This is the existing survey. Where is the survey showing?
The proposed.
the
There is a
proposed.
survey proposed, and there is a survey that's existing. There should be two of them. There should be two sets
Got
of
it,
proposed.
got it.
I've seen it.
Let me just hold this side by side for a second.
Anything else? Ham, any comments?
No, I think it's, I think you've got 30-foot setbacks, 43 to the front. No?
Esther?
I'm still digesting. Go to Brian.
Brian had no issue. Any public comment? No issue.
You want another minute?
I just actually talked to the neighbor. She loved the plan.
Okay.
So it's all
Just
conform-
materials, sorry. Just materials. What is the roof material?
Cedar.
Cedar, and the siding?
Cedar.
Okay, and the brick?
Red
clay?
Red brick. It's just like the rendering. Red brick.
And the
brick.
height of the ridge line?
35.
It's 35.
Only in the middle. The rest of the house slopes down.
And in the context of the neighboring houses, what is the height of the roofs to the neighboring houses?
To the south, the big house is high.
Well, I'd like to have the height of the house in conjunction with the neighboring
That's
houses?
exactly directly next to it.
I'd like to have it on a plan where you're showing us how high this house is and how high the houses on either side are. That's what I'd like to have.
If you could look at that pictures that I sent to.
Yes?
Yes.
I have the
The
pictures.
house on the first one, the first top left.
Yes.
That's a new construction. I believe it's about 35 feet.
I'd like to know factually how high it is and how high this house is and how how
My
high the
house
house
is
is on the other
35
side.
feet, and the house next door is one-story ranch. I don't know how high it is. And across the street is one story, but the across the street from Harvest is one story. Across the street from the Moses is vacant. And then I showed a couple houses right next to it. I don't know exactly how high it is. I don't think I'm permitted to go really measure it. The only house I can put it out of from the building department is one that's under construction.
Okay. I'd like to go take a look at it. Other than that, I have no issues.
I don't have any issues with it, fine. With respect to another member who wants to take a look at the site, I would,
Any objection?
No.
All right. One of our members wants to just get a site visit. First time this application is being heard, so we're just going to grant that board member the opportunity to do a site visit, just to get a contact of the community as well as what this is going to look like when it's finished.
Okay.
All right, so.
it looks nice.
Thank you.
Doesn't seem like we have any issue with the architecture. There's no issue with the aesthetics. There's no issue with the materials being used. We're just looking at the, basically, how it's going to tie in terms of height.
So what should I do?
You're asking this board to adjourn.
You should go home and chew your fingernails.
You're asking this board to adjourn so that we could have that site visit, correct?
Yeah, but
I have to come back in 2 weeks?
Yes, you would.
Oh.
This is the first time this application has been heard. Normally, applications take a few times to be reviewed. There has been no opposition. It seems there's no opposition on the board, but we do have a board member that wants to do a site visit.
Okay.
And she's right here.
Any public comment before we close? Motion to approve applicant's request to adjourn.
I make a motion to approve applicant's request to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Final application for this evening.
Broren and Klein, 79 North Captain's Neck Lane, for 1- and 2-story additions to the dwelling.
Is the applicant present?
Is the applicant present?
Motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn Broren and Klein, 79 North Captain's Neck Lane.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We have just a floor discussion with regards to Columbus Day. Our board meeting falls on Columbus Day. Board members who want to change the date until Tuesday, we just need to give the building department enough time to post and mail this publicly so that we comply with our proper posting. Board members have any issue with changing this to Tuesday?
What date would that be?
That would be the
October
14th.
14th.
Okay. I think
I have
I'm
no
good.
issue.
My son comes 3 days
Do you have
later.
any issue with regards? All right, so we will give a motion to approve changing our October 13th meeting to October 14th.
I make a motion to move the ARB meeting from Monday, October 13th to Tuesday, October 14th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Minutes from August 11th. Everyone present?
Except for Christina, which is fine.
All right. Every board member had the opportunity to review.
Yes.
Question, comments, concerns, errors? Motion to approve the minutes from August 11th.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from August 11th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And motion to close this evening's meeting.
I make a motion to close this evening's Board of Architectural Review and Historic Preservation, August 25, 2014.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night.